Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 924 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And we're seeing something very interesting happening in Belarus. We're seeing them shoot down Russian drones, which could lead to some bad things happening between Russia and Belarus. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And a massive shout out, by the way, to Toeman the First, who just threw in an unbelievable super chat. Big shout out for that. And we will be getting to that in a little bit, but we have insane news to cover. And it is an unbelievable day today, at least in the Russian world, as the Belarusians on film for the first time. This is the second time we've heard of this thing, the first time we've ever gotten this on film, at least in high quality, to be able to tell what's going on. The Belarusians have shot down Russian drones that were flying over the city of Gomel, and in a very aggressive and provocative action against the Russian Federation, which is supposedly their ally. We have one piece of video marked on the map near Gomel where the shootdown happened, and we have endless loads of these videos of the shootdown on our Twitter account. But this is something that is unprecedented and unheard of, at least in the terms of aggressiveness and severity that we're seeing at the moment from the Republic of Belarus against the Russian Federation. We're going to be talking about this a lot more tonight, about what this may mean in terms of diplomatic consequences in between Belarus and the Russian Federation, and what this is really going to amount to, because this, as far as we can tell, is an unprecedented incident, and most likely a very provocative one, by the Belarusians against the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, we were also able to hear the big news today, and I mean big news. The Russians were stopped in Pokrovsk, and they have taken incredibly huge losses on film, and according to Ukrainian forces, as it appears that the Ukrainians have finally been able to solidify a semi-permanent defensive line on the eastern outskirts of Pokrovsk, and have now stopped the Russian advance in this area. We have
But Enforcer, wait a minute. You're telling me that the Russians are stopped? I thought they were plowing through the front lines like some people were saying. You're telling me that they're not?
They're not. They've been stopped.
What do you know?
What do you know? I mean, it's like this has not happened a million times before. Isn't that crazy? But we have endless amounts of footage, speaking of which, Matthew, of column after column of the Russian forces that were advancing today, like they kind of have been over the past few days, getting absolutely slaughtered out in the area around Hradivka and Novohrodivka, which are all on the eastern side of what we could call the Pokrovsk battlefield at the moment. A really big thing, and once again showing that even major Russian offensives, the likes of which we actually have not seen over the entirety of the war, either in the Battle of Bakhmut or the Battle of Divka, can actually be stopped, at least pretty significantly, even with some Ukrainian brigades in the area saying that they have been deprioritized for munitions and support. And we also have even bigger news coming out today as well, as we were able to hear from the Kursk front that they are continuing to get ready for the road that lies ahead. We've also seen that the Russians have ended up laying down another pontoon bridge. The other one from yesterday still has not been destroyed yet by Ukrainian artillery, and this is starting to change our analysis of this area a pretty decent bit based off of the Ukrainians not knocking out these pontoon bridges and what is starting to unfold, at least on the banks of the Reka Sem. At the same time, we also got a decent amount of news out of the Pokrovsk area, and also got to see a new and revolutionary Ukrainian armored personnel carrier that will be introduced to the front line in the Freedom of Russia Legion here very soon. And we also got to see a little bit more of what's going on in the Severonsky Forest, with the use of a new kind of a drone warfare in an exorbitantly common degree at this point. And we also got news intermittently from the rest of the front line showing the combat action happening in those areas. We also have a little bit of news that came out of China today, but we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. Make sure to stick around if you want to hear that one, because we're probably going to get to it during the middle of our Ukraine war news segment, not at the very end of the news or the very beginning. It will probably be somewhere in the halfway point. But moving on into our major news today, it is time for us to head to the town of Gomel. Gomel is one of the largest and most populous towns within southeastern Belarus. A decent jaunt from the capital Minsk, this city has ended up being a pretty important one throughout the course of the war. At the beginning of the conflict, in 2022, a large amount of Russian forces actually used Gomel as a staging area to be able to build up their forces and then conduct the offensive that would move into the Chernobyl exclusion zone and across the border heading towards Chernihiv, beginning the Battle of Kyiv in full form once February 23rd hit about 2.5, almost 3 years ago. At the same time, Gomel has also served as a pretty important staging area for other forces later in the war. The Belarusian military has always had a somewhat moderate or smaller presence in the town, and we've also seen that the Chernivtsi Wagner for a while actually set up a camp near to the area of Gomel before they started to move a little bit deeper into the country and into the area around Boroviki, somewhere around here. But beyond that, the Wagner also called Gomel home for a small while. But that seems to be changing, and at least the tides that have existed in between Belarus and Russia for a while may be diplomatically falling apart, because we got footage today over the city of Gomel that a Russian Shahed, multiple Shaheds from what we were told, but we were able to see this one on film, were shot down. We actually have video footage of a Shahed barreling towards the ground, on fire, having been shot down by Belarusian air defense over the city of Gomel.
Kind of crazy to see, too, because you would think Belarus might let that just go through their airspace and let that be the end of it. But for them to shoot that down, considering that Poland won't even shoot stuff down over their own airspace, that's kind of crazy.
It is. I mean, this is insanely crazy, really, to be honest. And also, while we only have one clip of this here on our map for our news, I am going to be taking y'all over to our Twitter really quickly, because we actually have a lot more over here as well. So let me take y'all over to the profile and show y'all this really quickly. By the way, we're really close to 19,000 followers on Twitter. We're at exactly 18,916. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can. Links in the description below, but that's beyond the point. Here is the footage that we had just a moment ago of the drone being shot down. We were also able to get an additional clip right here of the drone spiraling to the ground. We're not really sure if this is the same drone or a different one. We did get a report that there had been multiple drones, at least 2 or 3 of them, that was shot down in the Gomel area. This looks fairly similar to the fireball that we saw in the first clip. It's a different angle, but it does look to me to be maybe a second Shahed or maybe the same one. But we can still see it spiraling to the ground, a fireball.
Только что был взрыв какой-то. По всей видимости, там взорвался то ли вертолет.
Quick, make a wish. It's a shooting star.
I wish for Russia to lose. Shame in. Like.
Also, by the way, I see some people in the live chat asking, how did the Belarusians know this was a Russian Shahed drone and not a Ukrainian drone? And I really don't know the answer to that right off the bat, but Enforcer, do you happen to know?
The answer is the Ukrainians do not use the Shahed drone, so if a Shahed drone is shot down, it's a Russian one. It's kind of like saying, well, an F-22 Raptor was shot down. How do we know the Americans were flying the Raptor? The Americans are the only people in the world to have an F-22 Raptor, so if a Raptor got shot down, it's an American Raptor. So that's why we know that this thing is a Shahed. We were told by people on the ground that ended up inspecting the wreckage, although we haven't been able to see the video and picture evidence yet, that these were in fact Shahed 136s that were shot down over Gomel, and apparently from the direction that they had been flying in from, they were flying from east to west towards Gomel, above the city, meaning that they had come from inside of Russia when they were approaching Gomel and were shot down. So all of this is leading us to know that these were Russian drones that ended up getting shot down over the area of Gomel. We then got the same footage again, a duplicate of a sort, but we were able to hear, according to the Belarusian Hygiene Project right here, which was on Telegram, that Shaheds, which sounds very similar to the way I say it, are being shot down in the Gomel region. Explosions are heard. 2 explosion sounds were heard in the Gomel region at 1:34 and 1:36, about 2 minutes apart, meaning that 2 of the drones were confirmed to have been shot down by this Belarusian Telegram account. And according to preliminary data, people hear and see anti-drone work in the Belarusian sky. But once again, leading us to know that according to the Belarusian sources, this seems to be Shahed 136 drones that the Belarusians ended up shooting down over their own airspace over one of the biggest cities within southeastern Belarus. And this is as escalatory as it gets, and this is why we're saying this, because we have seen that over the past few days, there's been a massive argument going on in between Poland and America, and really the entirety of the Western world, about what should be done with Russian drones, Russian Shaheds, that end up flying into airspace like Romania's near the Danube River Basin, or near to the area of Poland, along the Polish border. And we have seen time and time again that larger powers at play in the Western sphere, like the United States, have made it very clear to these countries that they cannot engage or shoot down any of these drones, because that would be escalatory and very aggressive. And for that reason, we want to avoid aggressive actions, and so don't shoot them down. And then Belarus is out here just just living life, I suppose, and they're shooting them down out of the blue. Like, they're just shooting down any drone that ends up flying over Belarus at this point, which we would have to assume, if it's extremely provocative and aggressive for a Western country to do such a thing, it would have to be even more provocative and aggressive for a diplomatic and military ally, supposedly a part of the same treaty organization, to start shooting down your drones over their skies. So that is why this seems to be one of the most provocative and aggressive actions that has ever been taken by Belarus against the Russians at this point in the war. I don't even really know what to make of it, to be entirely honest with y'all, because the fact that they're a part of the CSTO, and let me go pull this up for y'all, that's actually stands for the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which is the Russian equivalent of NATO, or their Russian half-baked equivalent at NATO. This is their emblem. This is their flag. It looks like a star fort. It's kind of a deliberate sort of a design there. But these are all the...
You mean like it looks like a throwing star to me. Was that what you were trying to say? It looks like a throwing star or something with like a wreath around it.
Oh no, this is a star fort from olden times. Let me see if I can pull up a star fort design. Let me see if I can pull one of these up and show you really quickly. Because many people may not know. Many people may or may not know. But if you look at that, and then you look at this, it is a star fort.
Ah, okay, interesting. That makes sense now. I see it.
Yes, because it's supposed to be the fortress of the Russian world, Bliet. So they made their emblem shaped like a star fort, four-pronged star fort at that. Although some of them really did get incredibly complex. Let me see if I can find y'all one that would be considered quite complex. Fort McHenry is a pretty good example. It's actually a pentagon. It's a 5-pointed star fort. And then there's also others. The Dutch ended up making some of the most complex star forts, like I believe this one's in the Netherlands. But that's for a whole other time to talk about. Maybe in a later question segment later on in the show. But still, this is what their emblem is. It's supposed to be like the fortress of the Russian world. That's what the emblem's supposed to be. But anyways, these are the members of the CSTO. And you will notice that there's not many. It's the Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, I believe Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, if I'm correct. And let me go check that. Let me double check that. Okay, so I got them in reverse, but this is Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, which are both members. Armenia is still listed on the map as being a CSTO member, but as of about 2 months ago, they officially withdrew, so they are no longer a member. And then that means that the only member left of the Collective Security Treaty Organization that we have not called out yet, outside of these four, is Belarus. Belarus is the 5th member of the CSTO. They're the only ones in the entirety of the alliance that exist in Europe. The rest of them technically exist in Asia, like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And also Armenia, technically, is also in Asia as well. So it's a little wild to see that Russia's only ally that they have by treaty organization in Europe ended up shooting down some of their drones over Gomel. And we do have to remind ourselves that the stance that has been taken so far on Russian drones as missiles is that you dare not shoot them down because you're going to piss the Russians off extremely. It's going to be a holy piss off that ends up happening with the Russians. That's why the West can't touch their drones or their missiles, even if they're flying through our airspace, because those are sacred and we can't touch them because the Russians will get so angry. And then Belarus, a military ally and a diplomatic ally, by the way, of the Russians, and heavily economically tied into the Russian economy, ends up shooting down their drones. That is insane. It is crazy to see, and there's been a lot of questions as to why this happened, or what in the world led the Belarusians to have a motive to shoot down these drones. And also, Danny said it's not aggressive if it was an accident. And you would think, going off of this, that this is an accident. And while this is the first time that we've ever had this on film, so this is the first time we can actually report this as fact, this is not the first time that this has happened, according to reports. It happened again about 5 or 6 days ago, but we didn't report it at the time because it was nothing more than unconfirmed rumors, and we had no picture or video evidence to actually back up the claim. But now that we have picture and video evidence to back up this claim, we're now retroactively saying that the prior claim is probably also true as well. Now that we have enough validity to know, the Belarusians probably do have a pattern of shooting down Russian drones over about the past week. So we are kind of trying to get the best idea here. What in the world could be leading the Belarusians to do something like this, to shoot down these drones and such things? And it seems like a decent amount of people are thinking that maybe the Belarusians mistook them for Ukrainian drones. I mean, sure, they flew them from Russia, but the Ukrainians could just fly their drones into Russia and then circle them back into Gomel, and then the Belarusians could believe that they are Ukrainian drones and then shoot them down. Others are actually saying that Russia is incompetent and it's nothing. Maybe they just strayed off their path and they ended up getting shot down for that reason. Some are saying that Russia is sending a very strong warning to, Belarus is sending a very strong warning to Russia. We're not entirely sure. Or Russia could be sending a very strong warning to Belarus or vice versa. We're not really sure. And we're trying to see about what in the world is going on inside of Belarus, or what people are really thinking is the end result of what's happening there. So, Matthew, what are people saying about this pretty major incident at the moment? Is it accidental? Is it serious? Is it some sort of a warning? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so let's see what y'all said about this poll. Currently, 34% of the audience said Belarus thought it was probably Ukrainian drones, and that's the reason why they shot it down, while 30% said Russia is simply incompetent and it's really a nothing burger, and 24% said Russia is sending Belarus a warning. And on this one, I would have to say, I'm going to rule out the first option here. I don't think Russia is trying to warn Belarus about anything. If anything happened at all, honestly, it sounds like maybe Russian incompetence, and maybe the thing simply strayed into their airspace, and Belarus simply did the right thing and shot it down like the Western allies should do as well, like Poland. When a drone goes into Polish airspace, it should be shot down regardless of where it came from, just for the safety of the civilians. So, to me, I think it's probably Russian incompetence, and it's also possible that Belarus might have thought it was a Ukrainian drone. That is a possibility as well, but considering the angle of attack that it came across Belarus's borders, they probably assumed it was a Russian drone and figured this thing's off course and it could kill somebody, so let's take it out preemptively. That seems like the most likely option to me, but of course, about 25% do believe that Russia is sending Belarus a warning. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would believe that the Belarusians probably ended up shooting down these drones because they were violating their airspace and it was causing a serious concern for the safety of people on the ground. I'm fairly certain that these are Russian Shahed drones. Hopefully, during the next few daylight hours, some picture and video evidence will come out showing us the debris of Shahed drones on the ground so that we can get 100% confirmation that these were Russian drones. But if that is the case, we are seeing that the Belarusians are more stringent about their own air defense than Western NATO allies are in the area of Eastern Europe. I would generally have to say, if I had to take that answer and put it down under one of the four options, I would say that maybe Russia is incompetent. Maybe Russia was supposed to be flying these towards Chernihiv, and the coordinates were off, and they ended up flying them towards Gomel instead. But that still doesn't explain away that the Belarusians shot these drones down practically instantly, because Gomel is not that far from the Russian border. At the area we saw them getting shot down at the closest, it's maybe about 20 miles into Belarus, which is not that deep. I want to put this into everyone's minds again, that near to the area of Tijuana, a Russian drone actually ended up exploding around that area, which is about the same distance into Poland, and absolutely nothing was done to shoot that drone down. It ended up blowing up on Polish territory, and then that's when everyone started to raise the alarm bells and say that there was a problem. So that is clearly showing us that the Belarusians were very proactive in shooting down these drones that ended up flying over Gomel. So I would say that, as far as I know, this is probably going to end up becoming a very hush-hush political incident or a diplomatic incident in between Russia and Belarus, as the Russians probably will be asking, why do you shoot them down? And who knows, maybe the Russians were trying to use Belarusian airspace to create a new attack vector with their drones and try and fly them into Kyiv from the northern side where air defense may be weaker, or fly them all the way around Kyiv and have them fly in from the western side where there may be no air defense at all. And the Belarusians just simply did not want that, and so they ended up shooting them down. It
seems like if Russia wanted to use Belarusian airspace as an attack vector, it seems like the Russians would have known ahead of time. They have to discuss that with Lukashenko, because right off the bat, they wouldn't know if it's an accidental firing or if maybe the thing's off course or malfunctioning. They simply don't know that. So without communicating to Belarus what their intentions are, it's almost certainly going to get shot down. And also, like the Enforcer was saying a moment ago, Poland should be shooting these down as well. Like, that's the common sense. If the thing's off course and out of control, you shoot the thing down. That's just the safe thing to do. But Poland won't even do that for whatever reason, probably because the U.S. is pressuring them. But Belarus will when they think something's wrong. So quite a very stark contrast with that. And I'm sure that pisses the Polish off tremendously. They're probably thinking, well, hell, the enemy shoots down the enemy's drone, but yet us, the ally, we can't even shoot down that drone ourselves, and we're literally fighting against those people. It makes no sense. But I highly doubt that they're trying to use Belarus as a new attack vector without discussing it with them first.
Maybe so, maybe not. We're not entirely sure. The picture is really vague at the moment. But one thing I will say about this is that this probably will end up being a major diplomatic incident that will be dealt with quietly. This isn't going to be anything that the Russians and the Belarusians vent publicly, because it wouldn't look good if they did. So this will be dealt with behind closed doors either way with what happened. But it is something very interesting to note that even Russia's allies have a more staunch stance on their air defense than the United States is currently allowing Western allies to have in Poland and Romania. We are telling Poland and Romania they cannot, under any circumstances, fire upon and shoot down any Russian missiles or drones that enter their airspace, because that may be taken as escalatory. And while we are sitting here going with this overly cautious approach to something that should be a domestic right or a matter of domestic affairs for Poland and Romania, and it should be their choice entirely at the end of it, Belarus is just over here shooting down whatever they want, regardless of who's launching it, whether it be the Russians or the West. We haven't launched anything to Belarusian airspace, so they wouldn't shoot anything of ours down because it's never made it into Belarus. But they're still shooting down Russian drones, and they're an ally of Russia. We should be taking this as a pretty good indicator that we should be giving the green light to Poland and Romania to be able to shoot down any and every single Russian flying object that enters their airspace if it was not authorized to enter. That would be my take on this at the moment, but this is still a pretty big issue, a pretty serious one at that, and we will be trying to keep a little bit of a better eye on this and really look out for any kind of diplomatic envoys sent from Belarus to Russia and Russia to Belarus and see what they're saying or doing, because this is a very bizarre incident that we've never really seen before. Well, in fact,
Honestly, I would have to say, instead of giving Poland and the other countries the green light to shoot stuff down, I would say it's not our place whatsoever to give them a red light, green light, or a yellow light, or whatever. We should simply back off of them and let them defend their own airspace as they see it fit, because the idea that we have to give a foreign country like Poland, which is a pretty large military power, the idea that the U.S. has to give them permission to do something, which is apparently the way it works right now, it's the way they're operating, that to me is just asinine. That's crazy. And obviously Poland has some financial incentive to do so. They don't want to lose some of that weaponry coming to their country, because the U.S. could screw with that and potentially hold back some Patriot systems. That is a risk. But I think the U.S. ought to just step back a little bit, because I think we're working against our own interest right now, basically going in here and basically holding people back from doing what they need to do to fight off the enemy. And we're doing that in Ukraine, and we're doing that in NATO as well. So just it's wild all the way around, really.
it really is wild. And I see a lot of people saying, why does the U.S., and this is a very common question, so I'm going to answer this really quickly because it seems like a lot of people don't know why this is the case, but why does America get to tell other countries what they can and cannot do, especially when it's in their own borders? It just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, hey, it's not just y'all who's thinking that. I also think that as well. It makes no sense, right? Well, there is a way that we're doing it, but it's not really a up forward and kind of an honest thing. It seems like a little bit of an underhanded thing, to be entirely honest, and I'll explain to y'all so that way y'all can see how this works. Poland right now is a growing military power in the area of Eastern Europe. In fact, is one of the largest ground armies in Europe outside of Ukraine and Russia currently. It's, I believe, the third largest. Poland is continuing to grow their armed forces practically every single year. They actually have the second highest defense spending in NATO by GDP percentage, and the only country to beat them is Greece. America is actually third place behind Poland and Greece. But beyond that, Poland is continuously building up their military, and they're not building it up with the weakest military tech in the world, which would be Russian or Chinese military tech. They're building it up with Western tech from the ground up. And let me go see if I can show y'all some Polish army equipment, so that way y'all can get a little bit of a better idea as to why America would have a pretty big say over the Polish. And so let me show y'all here, and let me scroll down. Showing off a lot of their older weapons. AKM, pretty solid, not that bad. Let's see here. And then they have a whole bunch of Western rifles as well. But the rifles aren't really what matters. It's the big ticket, expensive items that really count. Let's see here. Let me try and get a little bit further down. Here we go. So, as you can see, they have a decent amount of K2 Black Panthers, which are actually made by Hyundai Rotem of South Korea, interestingly enough, and they'll be building plants in Poland to continue the production of these. But the other main force of their tanks is actually the M1 Abrams, or at least it will be in the future. Right now, most of their force is made up of M1 Abrams and Leopard 2s, along with a vintage fleet of T-72s and PT-91 Twardies. But in the future, it's planned that their armed force will be made up almost completely of K2 Black Panthers. Some of their forces will use M1 Abrams, and a very small contingent of them will use Leopard 2s, with the PT-91s and the T-72s completely phased out in future service. But the Abrams, they're ordering about 250 of these things, and they're not garbage Abrams like the ones we kind of gave to Ukraine. They're going to be M1A2 SEP V3s, the most advanced Abrams that is currently fielded in service right now. And they're going to have about 250 of these things that are going to be introduced into their armed force. To give you an idea of how big of a number that is, the British only have about 200 operational main battle tanks in their entire army right now, and that number is actually shrinking every year. Poland is just planning on having about an additional 250 Abrams on top of their 28 and 28 M1A2 SEP V2s and their 116 M1A1 FEPs. So you can get an idea here, a really good idea, that they require a lot of American weaponry, and it has a lot to do with their national security, because the one way that a nation exists is through its army. Without an army and without a way to defend your sovereignty and your right to your own jurisdiction over your nation really doesn't exist. That's kind of how it works in the world, because anyone could do anything they want to you, and you're pretty much powerless to stop them. And so the United States has a chokehold for the large part on Poland, largely on the Air Force side and also decently on the ground forces side on their national defense, or really their right to exist as a sword. And so when Poland says, we're going to shoot down drones, we go, whoa, 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 hey, buddy, you're not going to do that. And then if Poland says, no, we are still going to do that, we will go, all right, sure, you can do what you want, but you're not going to get American weaponry if you're going to do that. And then we'll start canceling all of these orders for the Abrams that they're trying to get, and also all of the orders for the F-35s and the additional F-16s that they're trying to get in the future. And so many of y'all can start to see that while this doesn't seem like a really clear and straightforward way to persuade a country to do something that you would want to do or something you wouldn't want them to do, this is the way we're doing it, is largely by telling them, okay, we're going to deny the sale of weapons to y'all. We've done that with the Turks, actually, in prior times, like when they bought an S-400. We said, hey, listen, if you still want F-35s, you better not buy that S-400. And then Erdogan said, oh, I'm going to buy it anyways. And then we said, okay, you're canceled out of the program. And then we refused to sell the F-35s to them. And now with them joining BRICS, I'm pretty sure that we're going to stop selling everything to them here in the near future. But
I wonder, man. I was just about to say, I said, what happened to that, like, hardline stance against, like, going against NATO? Because right now, with Turkey trying to join BRICS, they're over there really messing with our interests in the Middle East. And overall, just the statements that Erdogan is making, you know, I see NATO going pretty hard on Poland, but I really don't see too many people really jumping on Turkey. We even have our, like, sailors being abducted in the streets over there right now in Turkey. And yet, yeah, and beaten, and hardly anything's being said about that, but in private. And also, there's some public statements here and there that allude to the fact that Poland is kind of in the bad graces of the U.S. right now because of what they're trying to do to defend their country. But yet, at the same time, Turkey seems to have free reign. It's kind of weird.
And also another thing, speaking of about that whole situation, is that a lot of people are saying, wow, it sounds like America's kind of conducting blackmail here. I see a lot of people saying that in the chat. Yeah, they are, really. I mean, like, the best way to describe this is some sort of a military blackmail, or an arms deal blackmail of a sort. But we do that a lot. The U.S. federal government kind of ends up running that way. It didn't really do that at the start. Back in the day, an American arms manufacturer could make whatever and ship it wherever, and the U.S. government really did not care too much about that. Kind of like how the Germans, especially the Krupp company, used to ship anything anywhere for anyone, and you could just use it. Like the Germans were like one of the biggest arms exporters of the world at the end of the 19th century, and Germany just literally did not care who was buying the weapons. They just cared that it made them money. But America nowadays, it kind of has a lot of control over how all of that works. The American government really, like, a lot of people say this is one thing that a lot of people get confused. A lot of people say that the military industrial complex, which is a kind of a goofy term in my opinion, runs the US government, but it's actually the other way around. The US government runs the military industrial complex, if you want to call it that. We tell them who will buy their products, how much they will buy, and then we can even cancel all of the sales that a company may be banking on in the future, just because we do not want that country to have those weapons. So it generally is the other way around. A lot of people misconstrue that and confuse it in the other direction. But another thing, just to let y'all kind of know this, because some people are talking about, do they do that all over? They actually do. The U.S. federal government also conducts some forms of blackmail against your state governments, especially if you're here in America, through funding. Because it's not a way to actually make people want to do what you want them to do. It's kind of telling them, do this, or else there will be consequences. And we usually do that, depending on who's in charge in the federal government, on block grants. Block grants are a large sum of money that the federal government gives out to the state governments. Back in the day, that never had to happen here in America because the federal government actually took less taxes than the state governments did, and so the state governments, at least as far as their tax base was concerned, was a lot more self-sufficient. But over time, that started to shift, where the federal government's the one who really receives all of the nation's taxes, and the state governments don't really receive that much, meaning that the state governments are now dependent on the federal government for continued funding, so that way they can run their state. So the federal government will say something like, we'll give you this block grant, and you can spend this money on whatever you want to spend it on, but you have to make the interstates have a specific speed limit. Otherwise, you will not get any of this money. And so then the state government has a decision. They can either start going broke, or they can accept the money and then change the interstate speed limit, or they'll have to do something else that maybe even might be against their constituents' wishes in that state. But the governor and the state legislator will have to make a decision on whether they want their state to continue to function or not. So as you can see, it's kind of how the federal government just functions these days. Is it good? I would say not, but that's kind of the world we live in and the one we have to analyze and work off of nowadays. But I still think that that's an undue influence that we're having over Romania and Poland, and that we should tell them, look, anything that has to pertain to your own domestic self-defense inside of your own borders, that is your affair, and if something does start to arise out of that, we will come to y'all's defense because you're a part of NATO, which is a collective treaty organization or a collective defense pact. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can and kind of give you all a little bit of an idea on how that whole side of the world, that whole part of the world works these days, at least in the upper levels of the U.S. federal government. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's time for us to move on down and into Pokrovsk. Actually, really quickly, before we do that, I just noticed it might be time for me to flip over really quickly and give y'all a small little update on what's going on in China, because it's about that time where it would be good to talk about this just really quickly. And Matthew, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the audience about China and Taiwan right now, this is probably the perfect moment. But moving on down into the Strait of Taiwan, near to the city of Guangzhou, which is a larger city that's along the Taiwan Strait, actually facing straight towards Taiwan, we were able to hear today that the People's Liberation Army Amphibious Forces, or the PLAAF, well, actually, it's not the PLAAF, sorry, let's see, it's the People's Liberation Army Amphibious Brigades. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what in the world they actually call that, because they have a specific name for the People's Liberation Army Navy Marine Corps, which is the Plan MC, but then there's also a amphibious element of the Chinese People's Liberation Army that does its own thing, and it has a little bit of a separate name, but it does fall under the command of the People's Liberation Army as a whole. But we were able to see that they were conducting amphibious landing drills today near to the area at Daicheng Bay, and I'll actually show y'all where Daicheng Bay is. And so let me go show you all this. So it's right here, and this is just south of where I was showing you all on the map. Somewhere around right here, but pretty close to the Taiwan Strait. It's actually technically in the Taiwan Strait. And we were able to get these pictures today from Chinese state media showing us these landings being conducted. And also, China was really whipping out the fine China, kind of a pun intended there, with these amphibious landing forces, because they were using some of their more modern amphibious wheeled gun carriers in this landing, and we can see Dacheng Bay listed right there, and we can also see these vehicles again. But let me see if I can.
That's some nasty looking water, by the way. Like this, the water looks good right here, but that last photo right there, shoo, that water looks nasty.
Man, that's the let's see, what would we
All
call
that
it?
pollution.
Septic,
All that smog.
the septic waste of hundreds of millions of Chinese exiting a single river, opening upstream and then getting wafted down south along the strait. Not really a good look, and I bet you that water actually probably smells a little bit. But this picture actually did look good, as well as this one. But every other, well, the last picture really showed you what the quality of the water is. But I believe, if I remember correct, this vehicle is the ZBD, let's see, 011, ZBD 11. Let me see if I can find this thing, because let's see here. So we have the ZBD 04, which is like the modern infantry fighting vehicle of China right here. This thing is amphibious from what I understand, but not really by much. It's a really heavy vehicle. But I'm trying to see here really quickly if I can find y'all the gun carrier that they have. So let's see. ZB, it's not that one. It's not that one. It's not that one. It's not that one. So let me go to the Chinese, the PLA ground equipment. Ground force equipment. Let me go find you all the list on this, because we need to know the exact vehicles that are being used, because it is one of the most modern amphibious vehicles that they have at their disposal, and it's supposed to be able to bring heavier firepower onto the beaches with the initial landing forces pretty much instantaneously, although it's in a much lighter form as far as armor protection is concerned. But let me see if I can find you all this. Here we go. Wait a minute, hang on. I don't think that's it. I think it's even bigger than that. Yeah, it would be bigger than this thing. So let's see here. Let me scroll on down. Dang, they actually have been fleshing out their forces recently a good deal. Here's the rest of their export-oriented weapons that they've made finally to export to other people who buy Chinese weapons. They have a lot of them. But now we're finally...
Who's the main buyer of Chinese weapons right off the bat, if you just happen to know? Who's buying that junk?
Good question. The Iraqis bought it back in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. The Iranians buy some Chinese military tech, as well as Pakistan. Pakistan's ended up being a somewhat bigger buyer of Chinese military tech in the past. So has India. India's bought a pretty good bit as well. Some African countries buy Chinese equipment. Vietnam actually had a lot of Chinese military support, as well as most of Southeast Asia, or what could be called former French Indochina. A lot of that ended up getting Chinese weapons. And then sometimes in other places, you see Chinese weapons popping up, but usually in like illegal groups. Like, for example, the cartel has ended up buying a decent bit of Type 56s in the past. We don't know if they're still buying those anymore, but there was a noted presence of Type 56 AKs, which is a Chinese AKM, that were popping up in Mexico. So really anyone anywhere was buying Chinese stuff, but that's like the bottom of the rung. Like, you had American and American, French, British military tech that was usually top tier, along with German military tech, but the Germans don't really sell to anyone. And then you had the Soviets, which were like the middle ground, and then the Chinese were literally like the bottom of the barrel. I mean, Norinco has a bad reputation for a reason, not just for in the civilian world, but also, just in the international world. It's not really like you want Norinco stuff. But let's see.
Well, it makes sense who's buying the equipment, because they all seem to be third-rate militaries and stuff, and also it makes sense why China would sell some stuff to the cartel, because that also screws with the United States a little bit. It's almost like a proxy situation. But it's like, nobody really wants to buy the Chinese equipment, because it's not like terrible like junk, but it's not exactly what you'd say on par with U.S. stuff, because the U.S. stuff is like the S-tier equipment. If you want equipment, you want the U.S. equipment, if you can try to smuggle it or something like that. But the Chinese stuff is like, if you have to get something new, like factory new, and you can't get anybody else to sell it to you, you go to the Chinese.
It's pretty true, honestly. But I finally was able to find the gun carrier that I was talking about. It's the WMA 301. This was actually a picture taken in Djibouti, which is the only foreign deployment that the People's Liberation Army, and really the entirety of the People's Liberation Army has. It's their only overseas base at the moment, which is in Djibouti. And Djibouti kind of makes all their money by leasing out their land to foreign military. So everyone has a base in Djibouti, pretty much. America does, China does, everyone does. It's just a place everyone ends up. But still, this is the vehicle that we saw, and this thing is fairly new, at least for the Chinese military. And not only that, it kind of ends up being, like, the best way to explain this vehicle is that it is a Chinese version of the AMX-10 from France, because it has a 105mm main gun. It also has a pretty mobile hull that it's on that is lightly armored but can move pretty quickly, and also it is amphibious, meaning that it can float up to shore. It can kind of boat its way up onto the shoreline and then end up getting engaged in action there. The reason why the Chinese use a vehicle like this that has such a big gun but is so under-armored is that the People's Liberation Army amphibious forces have a problem with being, at least historically, massively underpowered in terms of their actual firepower capabilities once they land on shore. And so does the People's Liberation Army Navy Marine Corps, which is the name for their Marine Corps, which also is historically, it's brand new pretty much, but historically, it's also heavily underpowered as well in terms of firepower. What this thing's supposed to do is that's supposed to fill the gap in between the People's Liberation Army amphibious forces landing on shore and the actual bulwark of the PLA's tank forces and mechanized brigades arriving and actually giving sizable amounts of firepower support to that initial landing force. So that's why these things exist, and that's kind of the role that they fill within China's army. But we did get to see these on display today in the drill, and it is showing that they're trying to display, at least for everyone in the world, that the People's Liberation Army amphibious forces aren't those from the 90s or even earlier than that, where they had practically no firepower and didn't even really have a way to make it to Taiwan. Now, if they ever make shorefall, they're trying to show they have enough firepower to maybe even repel Taiwanese counterattacks that are trying to push them back into the sea, possibly. But still, very interesting to see this happening, and a lot of people have been talking about this a little bit, but still, it seems as though there has not been an official question asked on this at the moment. I thought there was going to be, but there was no official question. But still, a lot of people have been talking about NATO, and some people are wondering if NATO is taking too weak of an approach towards Turkey's anti-Western actions, like we've been talking about now with Turkey officially applying to enter BRICS. And a lot of people have been putting in their inputs on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about this as well? Do you think Turkey should be punished, or do you think that they should let that slide? In fact, encourage it. What do you think?
All right, so we have to talk about Turkey. The Turkey in the room. It has to be addressed. And the question is, do you think that NATO is taking too weak of an approach toward Turkey's anti-Western actions? So 57% of the audience said yes, Turkey should be punished for their actions, while 22% said no, we should talk to Turkey only in private and deal with it through diplomatic closed-door means. And then 9% said Turkey is still pro-Western, and they sort of contradict the anti-Western thing. So, in my opinion, I would say that Turkey is definitely acting anti-Western right now. They are trying to join BRICS, which is the most concerning of the bad actions. Their people are also very hostile toward the West, and specifically the U.S. sailors that were just beaten and abducted yesterday in one of their cities.
But it looks like we flatlined, and we are back. So you can go ahead now. Sorry, I just want to make sure people could actually hear what you were saying.
So I would say that Turkey is really doing a lot of anti-Western stuff. So I would definitely agree that they are being anti-Western. So I'm actually not with the 9%. I would say that Turkey should be punished. And since Turkey is going out of their way to do all this public stuff against the West, I would say that it's time to bring the conversation out of the dark behind the closed doors and bring it into the light so that way all the other NATO countries can see, and also the civilians as well, that Turkey is going to be ousted, or at least some punishment is going to happen to them if they keep going this bad direction. Otherwise, it makes it look like NATO is very weak because we can't even keep our own membership in line. And honestly, one reason this might be happening is because NATO is not very hard line on anything right now. It seems like we're really not sure who's leading NATO at this point. It's sort of like a power struggle between France and the United States. Obviously, the U.S. holds the largest amount of money, so they're in charge because of finances. But on the leadership side of things, it's a little bit all over the place. And I think that's the reason why we're seeing countries like Turkey get a little bit out of hand like this, which we need to get a grip on it pretty quick. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say those are some really good points, and I would have to completely agree with it. But before I give my own answer, I want to show you something that I did not show on the news yesterday, but we had it on the map, which is the Sixth Fleet statement about the nationalist attack on two U.S. service members, two sailors that were in Turkey yesterday. They ended up getting beaten pretty badly. And this was the official statement right here that was put out by the Sixth Fleet. So I want to make sure to read this for y'all so that y'all can hear what was said. Naples, Italy. Two U.S. Marines from the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked aboard the USS Wasp were attacked in Izmir, Turkey, while on liberty during a regularly scheduled port visit at about 3:30 p.m. on the 2nd of September of 2024. The two Marines were aided by other Marines in the area and were subsequently taken to a local hospital for evaluation as a precaution, but were not injured and have returned to the USS Wasp. Local Izmir police and the Naval Criminal Investigative Service are cooperating in an investigation of the incident. No Marines have been detained by authorities, and those involved are cooperating with investigators. The 24th MEU is currently on a routine deployment with the WASP Amphibious Readiness Group in the U.S. 6th Fleet area of operations, supporting U.S. allied and partner interests in the region, including in the eastern Mediterranean Sea, ready for any mission and postured to deter aggression. The WSP ARG 24th MEU recently completed a bilateral training exercise with Turkey in the eastern Mediterranean. And so, right after we get done conducting a military exercise with the Turks, these guys end up taking liberty, which is shore leave for the Navy people. And so, anyways, they end up taking shore leave in Izmir, which is right here. It's in the Aegean. And they end up getting attacked by Turkish nationalists. Don't know why in the world the Turkish nationalists hate America, because it's really because of America Turkey exists as a country. Like, you know, we weren't really there in the Turkish War of Independence, and we've really been around to kind of bolster and support them throughout the rest of history because of how Turkey has existed prior in history over the past 100 years or so. And so it is a little ridiculous that something like this would happen to U.S. service members, and we continue to see that the Turkish government is doing nothing to try and quell these kinds of lunatics, these kind of crazy people. They continue to do things that would make Turks anti-Western. The Turkish government has openly stated that Israel is a terrorist state, that they will go to war with if Israel takes heavy action against Hezbollah inside of Lebanon, which makes no sense because the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is equally supporting some partisan action, if we can call it that, insurgent action by Kurdish forces inside of southeastern Turkey, the same as they are in southern Lebanon, but for some reason, Turkey views those differently and is going against Western interests in that regard. At the exact same time, Turkey also went against our interests in the Syrian civil war and ended up invading northern Syria and not only fighting Assad's regime in the process, but ended up attacking and fighting our forces, the Syrian Democratic Forces, that currently control everything east of the Euphrates River. The ridiculousness of such a thing to happen is insane. To see this happening time and time again. Not only that, Turkey has also continuously tried to build closer ties to some questionable countries in this region, like the Islamic Republic of Iran, even providing them support in trying to find the now deceased President Raisi of Iran when his helicopter crashed in the northern mountains of Iran. And then we are now seeing that they're trying to join BRICS. Now, I'm all for trying to find a diplomatic resolution or a diplomatic solution to an issue. But at this point, the Turks are pushing it too far. They are starting to they're being a little bit too comfortable right now with the massive benefits and advantages that they've been getting for their entire history from being a Western ally and a pro-European member, and at the same time, they're continuously spitting in our face, and they're doing things that are inherently against our interests. It needs to be made quite clear at this point that Turkey interests are going to be our interests, or this is where this path will diverge, and the United States will start to become openly hostile to the Turks, and we will make sure that their country is living in a pretty inhospitable economic and diplomatic environment from that point forward. This is
also Enforcer, real quick. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that thinks this, but just overall, based on the things that have been happening inside of Turkey and the news I've seen out of there, I get the impression that the Turkish citizenry, the population, sort of really doesn't sort of lean toward the pro-Western ideas. They seem to be leaning toward the Russia-China side of things a little bit more often than they do the Western side of things. That's the impression I get, that the population really doesn't agree with some of the stuff the West is doing, and that might be some of the reason why you see Turkey flip-flopping so much between pro-Western and anti-Western ideas, and now they're taking a sharp turn toward anti-Western stuff, because I think that's what the population really wants.
It's kind of what the population wants. Well, it's a really complex situation right now in Turkey, because half of the population is bat crazy, to try and put it in a better way, and they're the ones who ended up electing Erdogan, which I'm not really a big fan of. And then the other half is your traditional Turks, well, what we would call traditional Turks historically, from the founding of the Republic of Turkey back in 1922, that largely view themselves as more European aligned than anything. And due to recent changes in Turkey, which are really hard to explain really quickly, but it has to do with a lot of rural people who never really got involved in the government before, or elections for that matter. A lot of them moved from the countryside of Turkey and into the major cities like Istanbul, and so they completely started to flip the way the elections were going, and that's how Erdogan ended up being elected. Because the fact that Turkey nowadays, and I want to make this very clear, the fact that Turkey takes almost semi-official religious stance, for that matter, in the Middle East, it would make the founder of Turkey spin in their grave to see, because if y'all don't know, Turkey was founded not as the Ottoman Empire. Like, Turkey didn't evolve from the Ottoman Empire into what it is. It completely changed. The modern-day Republic of Turkey is supposed to have absolutely nothing to do with its past, historically. That wasn't done because the West made them ashamed of who they are, something like some people say with the Germans or whatever. This was because Ataturk saw how messed up the Ottoman Empire was in its final dying days. Ataturk, who was the founder of the modern-day Republic of Turkey, was actually an officer in the Ottoman army during the Battle of Gallipoli, and was there during the fighting when about 250,000 Anzac troops ended up dying on the beaches of Gallipoli, along with about 140,000 Turks. And he knew that Turkey, or the Turkish government, wasn't really that good of a government anymore, well, the Ottoman government. And so afterwards, Turkey ended up being occupied by a whole bunch of major powers. Ataturk ended up rallying up an army to fight against the Western nations and push them out of Turkey to form the modern Turkish state. And in 1922, the modern-day Republic of Turkey was formed. It was completely secular at its conception. It was not supposed to allow any kind of religious statements or actions made supporting a religion in the government. That's actually written into the Turkish constitution, a separation from religion. Well, the way they describe it is a freedom from religion, not a freedom of religion. Unlike America, where we say that you have freedom of religion and you can practice any religion you want, and you can allow that to guide your decision-making in the U.S. government to an extent. In Turkey, the constitution specifically lays out that you have freedom from religion, meaning that you cannot wear any kind of religious symbology inside of the Turkish parliament, or the Congress, if you want to call it that, meaning that if you wore a cross necklace, that is subject to some sort of punitive action by the Congress. If you wore a hijab or a burqa, that was also subject to some form of discipline or some sort of punitive action by the Congress, because you're not allowed to do that inside of the Turkish Congress. But after this massive shift that happened in the 80s in Turkey population-wise, a lot of the rural country people who didn't really have a lot of a connection to the Turkish government started to vote in the elections, and they could be considered a lot more religiously extreme than what Turkey is compared to in the norm. And so because of that, Erdogan, who actually lived in the slums of Istanbul and was from one of those rural families that came from the countryside and came with their kind of ideals, he ended up rising to power back in the late 2000s, well, really the early 2000s and back in the 90s, sort of. But he ended up starting to change Turkey into what it is today, which is a completely opposite kind of a country than what we've been used to dealing with for about the past 100 years or so. And so that's why Turkey now looks like this completely foreign object, because up until now, it's operated completely differently. It wasn't like this. But now that it's starting to turn into this, I don't think that we should hold any bars back. We need to tell them to either change their ways and go back to the Turkey that we knew for about 100 years, or they're going to be parting paths with us. And we're going to be making sure that any countries within the Balkans that were going to be a part of their mini-sphere will no longer be friendly to the Turks. We'll also make sure that if Ukraine wants to continue to receive Western support, they will also be unfriendly to the Turks. We are going to ensure that every single country in the Middle East that has any connections with America will be unfriendly to Turkey. We are going, like, if this was the case and I was the president, I would be making it very clear to Turkey that they are going to be exchanging a lot of friends for very few, because by the time I would get done with them, they wouldn't be trading with anyone. They wouldn't be making money from a soul, because they will not be able to have any relations with them, because much like America is blackmailing countries these days to be weak, I'm going to be blackmailing countries to tell them you're not having anything to do with Turkey a damn bit. Because
I
while
don't know, man. It sounds like a good idea, but I think the way it's going, we're going to let Turkey basically continue to keep their NATO shield, which is very valuable in itself to actually have the shield of NATO Article 5. But at the same time, we're going to let them do anti-Western stuff, and we're going to let them join an anti-Western economic alliance as well. They're going to ride both sides of the fence so good, it's going to be legendary if they're allowed to keep going this way.
I mean, it's insane. It's insane. We're going to have a NATO member that's also in BRICS. Like, BRICS doesn't mean anything really, but the fact is that BRICS is the alliance of evil. I mean, it's literally, like, out of all the countries in BRICS, you have Brazil, which is, I mean, it's not bad. It's all right. I mean, they're not, like, evil. They're just a little questionable, at least on their governmental level. But then you have Russia, the basis of evil, Iran, the basis of evil, China, the basis of evil, and then India, which isn't really that bad either. They're just kind of a little questionable, sort of, but they're starting to lean more towards our way, so, we let that slide. But still, they're going to join a group like that? I mean, it's got 3 of the most evil countries in the world in it. I mean, the next thing you know, they're going to be getting North Korea in it before long. It's like, why in the world should Turkey be allowed to join an alliance like this? It's not that it actually has an impact on anything, it's just the fact that they would join it. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. It's very bizarre. I'm sure Turkey just wants to have good relations with the wonderful countries around the world. Like, for example, Russia committing war crimes rampantly, China committing war crimes rampantly, North Korea wiping out the boat drivers after they knocked Kim Jong-un into a tree and nearly drowned him in a flood. They just want to have great relations with those countries over there. It's just, I don't understand it either, because Turkey has a perfect situation with the West. Which is why, unfortunately, we have to strike fear in some countries like Turkey, because if we don't, they will take advantage of us. And I think Turkey's trying to do that right now. I don't think they're going to totally move away from the West, but they want to try to milk the West for all we've got, and then at the same time jump on the other side of the fence and say we want all that brick stuff too, and we shouldn't allow that. That's like betraying our loyalty and everything else, and it's just totally wrong.
I would agree. And so that would be my take on Turkey right now. That's what I would do. But, I'm not in charge. Y'all would have to wait another 17 years for me to even have a chance of being president. So, just sit around and wait. If you want stuff like this to happen, all for it. I mean, I'm not for, like, of course, when I say things on this channel, it always sounds like I'm for shafting people. Like, people do the wrong thing and they get shafted. But really, to be honest, like, sadly, I only get to talk about that kind of stuff because it's usually those kinds of moments when a talking point has to be made. But as far as dealing with our European allies, I would think that a further opening of economic relations with Europe, trying to even increase the amount of trade that we have with them across the Atlantic, that would be a really nice thing. It would be beneficial for everyone, and it would be making sure to keep the money pool circulating through countries that are very friendly with each other and have a common united interest. That would be something I would want to do. And also, on top of that, do the same thing in Asia, although we trade with South Korea and Japan about as much as you can at this point. I would still like to try and increase that trade as well, along with others. But, I only get to talk about
You want to let Japan have U.S. steel, by the way? You want Nippon to take U.S. steel?
Not really. Now that's one thing where I kind of have to draw the line. Like, U.S. steel is U.S. steel. Like, U.S. steel has to remain controlled by an American company. Like, even if we have to end up bailing them out, it's like it has to be American, because steel production is a strategic necessity, and that needs to be under some sort of American control or leadership. Nothing wrong with Japan. It's just that, you don't want to give over a strategic resource or a strategic industry like that and put it under foreign leadership, even if that leadership might even be better than ours.
I agree. I was asking that mainly out of just asking it really just for the heck of it, because in reality, I don't think anybody wants to see U.S. steel be bought out by a foreign country. Nothing against Japan or anything like that, but when it comes to an industry that important like steel production, like the enforcer's saying, we should keep that under our control. Same with pharmaceuticals and everything like that. We should have those industries under our control and not outsource that, because if we're ever at odds with a country, no matter how unlikely it may seem, we can become at odds with countries that we're on good terms terms with right now, we'd be in a very bad pickle because then that country can control a very vital industry, and that would be a huge national security risk. For example, look what's happening with China right now. If a war broke out where China was becoming a real enemy at that point, we would be in some tough shape with some industries because they control it. So we shouldn't let those go. And I agree with you, Enforcer. We should bail that company out. If they are having such bad problems, we should bail them out and help them because that is something the government has an interest in, and also the taxpayer as well, and we should bail them out.
And let's see here. I'm trying to see if we can get an answer here. Jesus. Oh my God. That's crazy. Hang on. I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading this right. Let's see. World's biggest steel producers by country. Good Lord. Okay, well, we lost that race a little while ago. Makes sense though. But this is actually an accurate list. I had to double reference it. But this is in millions of metric tons per year in crude steel production. China is number one by a million miles. The only country that gets close is India, and they only have 10%, well, a little over 10% of the steel production that China has. America is down here at number 4. It's actually the 4th largest in the world in steel production, but it's not a lot. I mean, it's only it's actually a lot. It's 81 million metric tons per year, which is a great deal, but that's nowhere close to the billion metric tons that China is producing a year currently. Probably tofu dreg quality steel. It's probably closer to pig iron than steel, but that's still pretty wild to see on a figure right there. But I wouldn't want
We'll
that
never
to-
match that. We'll never match that though, because like you said, the quality is no good, and also I think a huge reason why the U.S. has never crept too far up this chart, like all the way up to the number 1 spot, is because we do adhere to environmental protections, and we should, because when you have none, you can do just like China's doing. You can make a ton of steel and not worry about polluting the environment and just destroy your entire landscape if you want, and that's what China's doing. But we have to sort of like reel things back a little bit because these countries have to manage the environment, which is smart. We shouldn't ruin our country to make some steel, but China doesn't care about that. Neither does India either, so they just go hog wild making everything.
Yeah, that's true. Also, Japan is the only country in the entirety of the Western world that outproduces us in steel. So if Nippon did end up taking over U.S. steel, probably wouldn't be that bad of a thing. Honestly, also on top of that, with Japanese company leadership, now, I will say this because there's a little bit of a trade-off here. We're really getting sidetracked in like a rabbit hole with this. But as far as Japanese company structure goes, or Japanese company culture, you in Japan largely have to end yourself before you end up disappointing the company. So it would be putting some pretty bizarre, like pretty crazy amounts of strain and stress on any American management that would be under Japanese control, but you would be able to ensure that the production is a lot more efficient, although it comes at the decrease in the quality of life for a lot of the people working for that company. So that would be kind of a trade-off there. Probably something that Japan would have to figure out how to work with, because the working culture in Japan and America, and while a lot of people look at Americans as workaholics, in the modern day, Japan truly is the workaholic. You work until you die in Japan, and the company really doesn't care that you work for. Well, what in the world do you have in your free time or your work-life balance? In Japan, there is no work-life balance. The company requires that you just do work only and no life. And so,
Oh, they don't have that over here either, sadly. Like that's sort of gone by the wayside in the United States as well. So I think Japan and us are pretty much on the same page.
you think that it's gone to the wayside until you look at Japan, because Japan's rate, of people ending themselves is so high because of that. Like that's something that a lot of people don't touch on, but the stress and the kind of pressure that the Japanese companies put on their workforce is why that rate is so high. For the most part, that's what it's been attributed to. And then when the Japanese government found that out in a study, they ended up kind of brushing that aside because they don't want to get in the way of the companies, keeping up Japan's GDP, which is, the 3rd largest one in the world. So that's kind of the thing with that. But anyways, with that, I see some people saying you can't treat Americans like Japanese, doesn't work well. It does not, actually. Like Japanese work culture and American work culture are some of the extremes, but Japan far beats out America in terms of having no work-life balance at all. Europe is pretty decent, like with the work-life balance thing, but then there's some negatives that you take with that. It's always a double-edged sword. You're just trying to figure out what benefits do you want and what disadvantages are you okay with accepting. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. That rabbit hole went on so long, and we still have so much to cover. But beyond that, we do have to answer a few questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first question segment of the night, we have some very good super chats here. And the first one and the largest one of the night goes to Toadman the First, a longtime channel legend who throws in a $300 donation. And thank you very much, Toadman, for that massive support. That is huge, and we appreciate it. He said, LSA, and I don't know why YouTube says this is only my third super chat, but how is Turkey's request to join BRICS going to affect its position in the NATO alliance and the Ukraine war as a whole? And also, hope you are both having a good evening, and LSA and Slav Ukraine.
And LSA and Slav Ukraine. And thank you for the unbelievable support, Toadman the First. That is massive support. And really does help this channel to keep on running. And I got to give you a huge thanks for that. And really enjoying the channel massively. And also being an enforcer level member of the Patreon, which means that you're putting in $100 a month on Patreon. A big thanks to you for the massive support that you continue to show this channel, because it helps us to be able to keep doing this as a job and make a living doing this, which is a really important part of being able to continue this thing. But beyond that, to answer the question, and also... let's see here. Yeah, let's see. I saw someone say Ukraine news coming up momentarily. Yeah, that's true. It is coming up momentarily. Just hang tight, everyone. But beyond that, as far as Turkey's relation with NATO is going to go, I'm not sure how it is going to go, because I would assume that this will naturally start to degrade their relationship with NATO and also the EU customs union that they're a part of. Now, Turkey is not a full-on EU member, but they have been able to enter some sort of an interim agreement, an economic agreement with the EU to get some tariffs advantages that some EU countries would get on specific goods types for import and export. I'm not really sure how that's going to go from this point forward, considering that they're going to be in the EU and BRICS, and those are generally mutually exclusive. They're economic groups, for that matter. So I don't know how that's going to go. As far as NATO is going to go, I would assume that a lot of countries are no longer going to trust them, because they're a part of the axis of evil and then a part of the West at the same time. You really can't do one or the other. You can't be a fence rider like that. But as far as Ukraine war support goes, the Turks have never really slowed that down. The Turks are really the only ones who are providing any kind of larger vessels to the Ukrainian Navy. And they're providing 2 Corvette-sized ships to the Ukrainians. I don't really know what's going to happen to that. It seems as though the Turks are not really supporting Ukraine as much as they have in the past, and we may see that support eventually dries up and stops completely as they really start to go down this middle road or go completely anti-Western on in the future. That would be my take so far, but this is a very complicated and really crazy process to have to talk about, because I don't think any country in the world so far has done something this asinine and stupid except for Turkey. And I don't even think this is Turkey doing Turkey things. I think this is just Turkey being stupid at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Toadman the First, because support like yours does help us to make this thing possible. And I saw someone in the chat, Matthew, a second ago. Someone said, and I gotta go find it. Let's see here. Real News Network said, how does a donation here help Ukraine? I'm asking because I do not know. Thanks. Well, a donation, like Toadman's the First, is not a donation. It's a super chat. Super chats go 100% to supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. This is what we do as a job. Matthew and me work about 60 or 70 hours a week each, so about 140 hours a week to keep this channel up on air and to keep this news rolling out every single day. And for us to be able to do that and spend that kind of time dedicated to covering news, this is a full-time job, and so we have to be able to make a living doing this, because, you know, living isn't free. You have to pay rent, you have to pay for groceries, we have to pay off our law school debt, all that kind of fun stuff in the background, so we end up having to make a living off of it. And the super chats help us to do that. It's the only way that we do that. As far as supporting Ukraine, we do support Ukraine on this channel, but that comes around every single Sunday. Every single Sunday, we run a nonprofit, and that nonprofit is one that is working in Ukraine and helping them out. Sometimes that is a worldwide organization like Doctors Without Borders. Although they help out around the world, they also help out significantly in Ukraine. Nowadays, we generally pick nonprofits that work exclusively in Ukraine, like Nova Ukraine or something along those lines. And so if you want to support us and help us to be able to do this as a job, you have from Tuesday to Saturday to do such a thing. If you want to support Ukraine, you show up on a Sunday and you support the fundraiser. Some people say, oh, that sounds wrong. listen, we're not telling anyone where to put their money. Like, you could literally not give us $1 the entire week and then show up on Sunday and put 5,000 into the fundraiser. That's entirely up to you as a viewer. You know, we give people the option here. We don't sit there and tell everyone, hey, give us all of your money and a portion will go to Ukraine, and end up running that scam that a lot of people love to do. We love to be as transparent and open as possible. Do not expect a single dollar you give in a super chat to go to Ukraine. That's pretty much just going to help us to run this as a business. But if you want to support Ukraine, you can show up on a Sunday and you can donate your heart's content to that nonprofit, which is helping out in Ukraine. That's how we work this thing. We give y'all the choice of where y'all's money goes directly, and we leave that decision to y'all, instead of y'all giving all of your money directly to Matthew and me, and then we figure out behind the scenes in a very non-transparent way where the money goes. We do not do that. We like to do it where it's up front, and y'all get to decide exactly where every single one of y'all's dollars go, either to us to help us to keep this channel running, or to Ukraine to help out people over there. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much once again, Toeman the First, for sponsoring this channel and helping it to keep on running, because it is folks like you help make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to BC Skyman, who's also a big-time channel legend, bigly. He puts in a 90, and thank you very much, BC Skyman, for that support, as always. And I don't see any comment attached to this one right here, but thank you, of course, BC, as always, for the support, and we appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman. That massive support. No comment, but the support does mean a great deal and helps us keep this channel running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here on air right now, getting to cover this news. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well to an absolute legend. And with that, we're on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight.
And this one's going to go to Jack Ray, who puts in a $55 donation, and thank you, Jack Ray, as well, for that very generous support. He said, which exported the lower quality military hardware in the last 20 years, Russia or the PRC? And he said, let's see, he said something about the bad incident. We can't mention it because YouTube gets really whacked out about it, but you can see it Enforcer in the spreadsheet. But thank you, Jack Ray, for the support.
I can see that, and that's a really interesting point. Sadly, we can't talk about that. YouTube doesn't like it when we talk about that. Who knows why? But beyond that, to answer the question, the People's Republic of China put out the worst equipment. When I was talking earlier, I was saying that, you know, America, Britain, and France were kind of like your top tier weapons sellers. And then below that, you had the Soviet Union. And then below that, you had Communist China. And Communist China truly is bottom of the rung kind of quality. Like, it's not just me saying that because they're the Chinese and it goes, you know, Chinese quality, it sucks. It really is true. Like, Chinese equipment is garbage every single day of the week. Let me go pull y'all up a Type 56 right here. A Type 56 assault rifle. Here we go. This is it. That is a Type 56 assault rifle. Looks just like an AKM, and that's because it is an AKM. Interestingly enough, though, they ended up putting the same lightning cut in the lower receiver that you would see in a Polish AKM. So that's actually kind of interesting that they would end up taking the same kind of like a design to their lower receiver, but still these things are considered lower quality than a Soviet AKM. In fact, it's actually pretty easy to find a Norinco AK out there on the American market, and they're usually considered not that great of a quality. They're not bad. I mean, you know, honestly, the American manufacturers of AKs these days, like Century Arms, they do a worse job at making an AK than Norinco did, but Norinco AKs are still considered fairly rough running. Like, even for an AK, they're not that great. Russian AKs in America are highly sought after and coveted, not just because they're Soviet and pretty rare collectors-wise because of that, because not a lot of them ever made it into America, but Soviet AKs, as well as really any Warsaw Pact AKs, are generally considered a higher grade and a higher quality than that of the Chinese, really. So I would say that just going off the small arms, and we can really like do a massive rabbit hole on this, but I want to make sure to cut this down so that way we can get back to the news, because we might start running overtime here. Chinese military equipment is the worst by far. It's starting to change these days. Like, the Russians and the Chinese are actually starting to flip places. Like, we're living in that transitionary period right now, because Chinese equipment as far as its abilities, is actually now starting to exceed the Russians in their abilities. That maybe started to happen about 7 years ago, but we're really starting to get towards the end phase of that, where the Russians are now going to be the bottom of the barrel quality, and then the Chinese are going to end up being second best behind the Western world in terms of their equipment and weapons. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and asking a really interesting question, actually. And with that, it is now time for us to finally move on back into the news. And we're going to be starting up in the Kursk Oblast and making our way around. Now, because of the rabbit hole, I'm not going to sacrifice the length of the news segment tonight because the rabbit holes were incredibly long. We're just going to go through the news normally and slowly as we go, and this stream will end up being as long as it has to be tonight because that rabbit hole was absurdly long. It was like 40 minutes long or something. But anyways, moving on from that and into the Kursk Oblast, we were able to see that not a lot of offensive action was seen in the Korenivo, Kromsky-Byky, or Belitsa front, or the Giri front today. We did get to see some action occurring around Bolshoi, Soldotskoy, and currently we're still seeing that the Ukrainians are making no advances in the area of the Reka Sem. We were also able to see the Russians set up another pontoon bridge inside of the area of the Reka Sem. We were able to see that right here on satellite footage, new pontoon bridge right there, and this is about the second one that they have at the moment that still is standing. We don't know why the Ukrainians aren't hitting these things as frequently as they have been over the entirety of the campaign. Maybe they're offering a path of retreat for this brigade south of the Reka Sem, or maybe they're not really planning on taking the entire area, although that would seem to be a commander's blunder if that's the case, as the Reka Sem does provide a natural barrier for their entire western flank to rest on, and it would ensure that the Russians would never have an easy time retaking the western flank of the Kursk offensive. But meanwhile, while we were seeing that going on, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were still fighting around Bolshoi Soldotskoy, and the 225th was filming some larger artillery action by Ukrainian forces in this area. We were also able to see that the Ukrainians are beginning to drop thermite on everyone everywhere, and the Korn Group, which is also involved in the Kursk offensive, filmed one of their drones flying around and dropping thermite onto the trees below, and pretty much setting the entire area on fire. This seems to be a new kind of Ukrainian strategy that they're starting to use, where incendiary weapons fired by drone for the large part, are being used to clear out large swaths of foliage to try and make it a little bit easier to conduct warfare and to also loosen up Russian defensive positions in some of these locations. We also got to see that the 225th Brigade, or the 225th Battalion, actually, of the 176th Territorial Defense Brigade, ended up having a little meeting today, and we got to see that right here.
Oh wow, big meeting. This is a big platoon meeting.
225-й. 225-й. Окремий. Окремий. Штурмовий. Штурмовий. Батальйон. Батальйон. Ми. Ми. Команда. Команда. Вперед до перемоги. Вперед до перемоги. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
And with that, that's the end of the clip.
Oh wow, that guy got the zoom in treatment on that fella right there. It's like, what the hell is this guy doing walking up to him with the camera?
And also, look at that helmet over there. What's this guy doing? Like, what's going on with that helmet?
I don't know, man. That's different.
I don't know. It's a little bit of a new fashion style, but nevertheless, the 225th Battalion looks to be ready for the road ahead. Moving on out of the Kursk Oblast, because there wasn't really a lot to talk about on the battlefield in that area today, we did get to see, however, that we had a decent bit of location unknowns that were fairly interesting. We got to see that the 126 TDF is beginning to field a larger amount of these, what are called shark drones. They all have the shark mouth on them, but there is some kind of a new reconnaissance drone, I believe, that they're starting to use. We could see them being introduced in incredibly large numbers already. Pretty nice to see that. Pretty cool to see that they're going to be hopefully having a lot more reconnaissance ability thanks to these kinds of drones, and we'll have to see how they actually perform in action here later. We also got to see the 93rd, the famous fighting 93rd, and how they've been training new recruits, or new conscripts somewhat, in the 1st Mechanized Battalion of that force. And so here's the clip. We're going to have to mute the advertisement music. Have you ever wanted to join the Ukrainian army and whip ass? Have you ever wanted to try and clear a trench like an absolute Chad? Have you ever tried to run down a trench with a guy behind you holding an AK? Well, then you, my friend, need to join the Fighting 93rd, the ultimate and famous fighting brigade in the entire Ukrainian army. Hold down a Russian position. When you see this guy firing into the water here as they cross the logs, we see them also climbing over a little rampart right here, a ladder of a sort. And we can see them now having to vault over a wall. It seems to be pretty typical fare. We can also see them having to evacuate a wounded soldat.
The climbing over like the obstacles and stuff always looks like fun. Like it really never really looks like hardcore training or anything. We actually got to climb those walls and stuff like that at one point. When they had the obstacle course and stuff when we were in high school, like that was pretty fun.
Man, I never got to because they didn't allow us to, and not in my grade.
And I got to rappel, jump over the wall, climb up the wall, and do all this stuff that they're doing right here.
Or remember some clown goofball broke their arm in your grade or something, and then the next grades could never do it, and so I never got
They
to
did it right in front of me.
Yeah.
Remember, the guy went down the rappel wall, which is very tall. I think it was like, I don't know if it was 100 feet or what, but it was pretty tall up. He went down the wrong way and busted his arm like right there on the side of the wall, and everybody's like, "Oh my God!" Like God just broke his arm and right in front of everybody.
Man, that guy went, ah, ah! It's just like, man, but then I didn't get to go, and I was very disappointed. But still, we see them getting in the water. They're firing into the water as they wade through. They're now climbing through the other side.
No, we didn't have to get in that nasty water like that, though. We
Nah,
didn't have to do that.
That water probably stanky. Like, it's just probably nasty. Now see them climbing under the barbed wire, making their way through. Now having to do some covering drills, maybe? I didn't see them firing, but we now see them showing another clip right there, and that's the end of the clip, but still showing us a little bit of what the training of the 93rd Brigade looks like, at least in this clip right here. But anyways, with that, moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the low pass of low passes from an Mi-8. Clip's about 5 seconds long, but that's about all we need to see.
Oh, damn. That's
pretty low.
like crazy low.
Yeah, that was pretty freaking low. Let's watch that again. That's a little too low for comfort right there. It's just like, yikes. But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there. Really cool to see something like that. Was that dangerous? Yes. Would OSHA have an issue with that? Probably. But do they have OSHA in Ukraine? No, they don't. And so with that, we're now moving on to our next clip, where we got to see that a modernized Strela, called a Strela 10, donated by the Kingdom of Jordan, interestingly enough, ended up shooting down a drone today. Check this out.
I like that little whistle.
Yeah,
I do too.
Чекаємо підтвердження РЕП!
And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but still pretty cool to see. And with that, we're now moving on into the Russian casualty report. And it was pretty high.
Oh, it's so juicy. 12 more Bombcats to go. And also, we did cross the 3,000 mark yesterday, so this is tremendous to see. 12 more Bombcats, and we've become spoiled at this point. They destroyed so many, it's like we can't even keep counting more, unless it's for the Kyiv Independent keeping count for us. We appreciate it. But unfortunately, tell us more.
Man, we get so many kills, you get tired of seeing the kills. But it was an incredible day today. 1,390 Russian troops ended up getting wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 27 APCs, 35 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 30 artillery pieces, 43 drones, and 12 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it was actually a pretty good day today, and it looks as though the Ukrainian defense forces are still conducting a very good job at knocking out Russian forces and ensuring to hold them back on the field. And when we get down to Pokrovsk, you'll see that was especially true today. Moving on up into the Vovchansk area, though, we did get to see a new BTR-70 that is going to be entering service with the Freedom of Russia Legion, called the BTR-70M, which is pretty freaking cool. Check this out. It's a BTR-80 hull that has the turret of a BTR-4, so it's being called the BTR-70M. I just really like that BTR-4 turret. I think they could put that on just about anything and it will look pretty cool.
Недорого на Kursk, Belgorod, Brянщина.
Man, I love that sound. That's such a nice engine.
Man, it's a solid engine. Great whir right there. But moving on from that clip and into our next one, we also got to see an anti-aircraft gun in action, a gush gun of a sort, in action near the area of Vovchansk. Whoa! Hey, no copyrighted music up in here.
They brought out all the playground equipment to make that song.
They did, and now we are going to have an epileptic fit. I didn't expect for this to look like this. By the way, speaking of which, if you are epileptic, probably a good way to look away from the screen right now because this thing is flashing pretty brightly. Like it even messes with my eyes, and I'm not even epileptic.
Man, you might want to skip this one.
Yeah, we might want to. I think that'd probably be a good move to make. So moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the 3rd Brigade's artillery. And so check this out. We can see this guy right here. He looks like a pretty nice guy with an AK-74. And then we got to see one of their guns. It looks like an M198, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. You know what? Let me go pull that up on M198. Yeah, it's an M198. Wait, no. It's not an M198. I'm thinking of the L105, I think. Am I thinking of that? No, I'm not thinking that. I don't know what the hell. It's the 105mm light artillery piece. It's like the L115, something like that. I forgot the name of it right now. Forgive me, folks. Forgive me. Really, please do. But we can see here, they're loading the piece, getting it ready to fire, taking some more pictures. Pretty cool to see them hanging out and doing that sort of a thing. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip. And we're now going to be moving out of the Vovchansk area and down towards Kislivka, where we got to see a Russian soldier ended up getting captured today. Not really a lot happened on this battlefield today, at least in video and picture evidence.
Нет, я с Мурома.
С Мурома? А ты же говорил, что с Воронежа.
That dude is so sunburned.
У вас Воронежская?
Да, там...
С вами кто? Какие бригады еще?
He's toasted a
Там
little
она
bit.
вообще как бы это часть танковой. Ну то почему это штурмовые?
They must like him though, because they put looks like a rag or something over his face before they taped his face.
Я говорю, я прям через поле полз, лишь бы выжить только.
He's like wearing a Batman mask, man. He's about to say, "Let us Smirnoff, блядь," or something like that.
Слушай, кто выжил.
Раз никотин бывает.
Тебя, видишь, никотин спас.
Well, that's the end of the clip right there, but still, interesting to see that they took a prisoner. Moving on from that and down into the Kremenna Forest, things were not fun down here today. The Ukrainians were hitting them with napalm or incendiary about as much as they could. Seems like the Ukrainians have finally ended up lifting the ban on incendiary weapons like thermite or anything else, and they're just starting to use it outright on the Russians. So check out this clip. You see the Russians wandering around down there, the Ukrainian drone observing them before it comes in for its incendiary attack. And we can now see it coming on in and dropping that delicious thermite on top of them. Look at them go. And there it goes. Oh, look at that. A little fire started right there. And they're dropping another. Oh, why, hello.
I'm
there.
not saying I agree. I'm not saying I agree with this or not, but is this like legal under the Geneva Conventions to do this? Because I thought it was restricted.
Well, technically, incendiary weapons really aren't that restricted. As long as you're not using them in an urban area where there could be civilians, it's anyone's game to use incendiary. So technically, this is not a war crime because we looked into this a lot back in the day. I remember about white phosphorus, which is also an incendiary weapon of its own. And we found out that as long as it's not in a populated area filled with civilians, it is pretty much completely illegal to use. So that's interesting in a way, you know.
So as long as they don't, well, actually, they can technically drop it on the troops if they wanted to, but they just can't drop it on populated civilian areas.
That's what I think the answer was that we came to back in the day. But if someone wants to correct me on that, please feel free to. But from what I understand, it's not really that big of a deal. Also, on top of that, the United States, at least for us, we never agreed to the specific rendition of the Geneva Convention that specifically prohibited the use of incendiary weapons. So technically, we can still use incendiary weapons, and according to our Geneva Convention, it's not a war crime. According to other people's Geneva Conventions, though, the versions that they signed, it may be a war crime. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see the Ukrainians doing it again. This time a Russian was filming it from the ground. And there it is, right over there, just dropping flames and fire on top.
И раскидывает какое-то сжигающее вещество. И сейчас она упадет потом.
А наш лесополк выжигает, Ломовск?
Ломовскую, да.
Чё
Вот,
ты-
вот, вот полетел.
Куда летит?
It's like a firework
Yeah.
out there. Oh, look, it's going up into the sky
Нет,
now.
нет.
It's just
Смотри,
traveling.
какой стоит.
Oh, and there it goes. It's just
Сейчас
flying back
идет
to base.
куда-нибудь.
Oh,
Камикадзе?
wait a minute.
Да.
Oh,
Oh. I don't think it went back to
Yeah.
base.
Всё упало просто.
you know, the Ukrainians are really creating some dilemmas for these Russians because, number one, they like fire quite a lot. In fact, I think some Russians might be arsonists. But at the same time, they like their scalp. So they got to figure out, are we going to watch the fire? Or are we going to let our head get burned off? We got to figure that out.
Dude, I can already hear some Russian, like, watching the thermite fall on his shoulder. He's like, oh, fire. And then it touches him. Oh, yeah, blah! Or something like that. You know, it's going to happen.
The other guy's like, the guy on fire is like, quick, put it out, Bliad, put it out, comrade, please put it out. And the other guy's like, oh, wait a minute, Bliad, it's so beautiful. Just stand there. It's like, no, put it out, Bliad, put it out.
And then they pour vodka on him to try and put the fire on, and they only make it worse. That's probably what would happen. But anyways,
100% proof, Bliad. It'll save you. It's good proof.
But before we start talking about how the Russians would actually help each other out, let me show you, Matthew, what a normal Russian interaction looks like in the Severonsky Forest right now. So here's the clip. Because we can't put unrealistic expectations on the Russians.
Там ебашло жужа надо мной прямо здесь.
Ты слышишь? Уебок нахуй.
Смотри, чапа нам наползает.
Ты чё, сука, слышишь?
Сука.
На связь не выходишь, а, долбоёб ебаный?
Я выходил на тебя по керосану раз 50.
Ты уебище, для чего тебе был флэнг, бля?
Нахуя мне керосан?
That
Я тебе,
sounds
слышишь, сейчас
unhappy.
с ноги в ебальник прямо, долбоёб. Уебок, мы, сука, всю ночь градника по лесу искали. Ты, уебище ебаное, не то что на рацию не вышел, даже с утра сюда не пришел, ты конченый дебил, нахуй.
Ты же выходил на тебя по керосану.
Ты ебло тупое, я тебе говорю, керосан не работает, у меня был фэнк, нахуя тебе? Проститутка ебучая, иди нахуй, бери своих гопников и переезжайте нахуй сюда, вот в эти одиночные окопы, понял? Долбоеб ебаный, чтобы ты, сука, вечно на связи был. Уебище ебаное, все, ебашь отсюда.
Anyways,
That guy was getting blasted by some guy leaning against the wall, acting like Big Pimp. I don't know if I'd have taken that.
man, I don't know, man. That might be where the fragging cases are coming from. It's just kind of treatment. But anyways, moving on from that, now to the area of Kremenna, well, you can see things are getting heated amongst the ranks over there. We're now moving on down to the Bakhmut, where we got to see a rifle drone in actual use. It's one of those drones, man, that they strapped an AK onto, and they just went out and started greasing folks. Look at this. You can see the little... Look at that!
That's crazy how that handles the recoil. Like, you'd think it would knock the drone off of balance, but it doesn't.
Honestly, it's not that bad. I mean, they're just going down, hosing Russians down. Call this a flyby. That's a good one. We're going to have to coin that one now. These are flybys.
And the Russians are fly by night because they don't stay for very long because they all get wiped out.
Man, you know some Russians down there, man. He's like, me and I wear red, I'm a blood bleed or something. And then this thing comes flying through. He's like, blood, fly by shooting, you know, or something like that.
Oh,
man, they spin in the black blood or something like that.
Oh, Bliat, they say in the West, spin the block to win the Glock. It's a new Mr. Beast video idea.
Oh, man. Actually, a new Mr. Beast idea is a $1 attorney versus a $10 million attorney. That's the new idea. But, oh, man. But anyways, moving on from that before YouTube comes down and knocks us out for that one, we're now going to be moving on down to the Pokrovsk front, where we did get to see that the Russians finally got stopped. And it looks like things went quite well down here today. I will be able to show y'all the past 24-hour report. Want to make sure to show this to y'all. As you can see,
not a damn thing.
Not a damn thing. In fact, it looks like the Ukrainians may have pushed the Russians back because the no man's land was readjusted in Seladove. But it does seem as though, right now, the Russians have been stopped, at least over the past 72 hours. And today, we got to see massive casualties being taken in this area. Starting off with our first clip, we got to see a near miss from a drone, and, oh, they took down that clip, and it was also marked as NSFW, so lucky we didn't get to see it. But we did get to see the Presidential Brigade scoring a hit in the craziest of ways. They ended up hitting a T-72 dead on with a grad rocket. The chances of something like this actually happening is slim to none. So it is pretty wild to see that they were able to slam this T-72 with a rocket like this. So check it out. We see the Russian tank right there. The grad barrage is coming in really soon. Boom. Right there, a grad rocket just ended up impacting that T-72 dead on the nail. On the roof, nearly.
It graduated from a T-72 to a T-0.
Man, and it immediately started cooking up as well. Now see the tanks come to a dead stop. We can see the crew now bailing out. You can actually see a couple of the ERA tiles on the front of the tank ended up exploding, and now we can see the ammo cooking off inside of that T-72, and the smoke grenade launchers also exploding from the heat. And that's the end of that clip, but that was an impressive first in the war where we've ever seen a grad rocket hit immediately and knock out a tank, from either side for that matter. But we also got to see in the Pokrovsk direction they were hitting them Russians solidly. Check this out. Okay, well, we won't be playing that. That messes with your brain but from the noise. But we can see right here that the Russians are just rolling. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the Russians are not rolling. The Ukrainians are rolling, and they hating. They're trying to patrol and catch them riding dirty. But I don't think the Russians are going to be catching the Ukrainians riding dirty. I think the Ukrainians are about to put some dirt in the Russians' eyes, and it looks like they really are. We can see them continuing to roll on.
The Russians are stuck in a house and they're getting pounded.
Ivan and his men were up in their tiny dacha, and they were getting pounded. And we can see them really getting pounded down there.
Oh, I can't see anything anymore. The smoke's so heavy. Oh, there's something.
Aw, man, did someone say they can't see because the smoke is heavy? Aw, man. You know, I hate what happened to the term hotbox. You know, because back in the day, hotbox used to mean that a roller bearing on a rail car was not oiled properly, and it was beginning to get hot and kind of like melt the metal because it was getting so hot from the friction, and so that was called a hotbox. But nowadays, hotbox just means that the hot dog man was bumming around all day and did nothing, and so kind of sad. But anyways, you can see here that the Ukrainians continue to keep rolling. We see the Russians up there in that house, and oh, they got him. Oh, boy. And we can see them here continuing to roll on, actually. Well, a little bit.
The battlefield is a very smoky place, Bliad.
Oh, and another hit. Dang.
Another one, Bliad.
And Barry Badgernet said, LSA trains. I know, right? Like, there's so many of them, and they're so cool. But we'll have to save that for a little later, because we are running massively overtime right now. Like, by the time we get done with covering the Pokrovsk front, it's probably going to be 11 or 11:05 by then, local time. But we can see the end of that clip right there. Pretty cool to see. And moving on from that, we have finally gotten a somewhat half explanation today from the Ukrainian government, or specifically from Zelensky, as to why everyone ended up resigning yesterday. Well, not everyone, but a good amount of people, about 4 or 5 of them in the Verkhovna Rada yesterday. And we also heard that apparently today, didn't put this on the news, but we also heard that apparently Kulubas, it's not Kubala, I keep on calling him Kubala, it's Kulaba, apparently his firing has been immediately postponed, I guess because it hit the public circles, but still, Zelensky said that the recent government resignations are needed for new energy and vision and passion. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts, and to be quite honest, it doesn't seem like many people are really buying that. But Matthew, what are people saying about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so after we saw at least 3+ Ukrainian ministers resign the other day, and also we did see the resignation of the Ukrainian foreign minister. Remind me that guy's name once again. Is Kuleba or Kuleba? Yeah, I think it's Kaliba. He was also the most high-profile resignation that we saw yesterday, along with the other ministers. What do you think is going on? What are your thoughts? 34% said it sounds like Ukrainian political oustings, while 25% said, I trust Zelensky 100% and his actions are justified. And 23% said, new leadership is needed, and I agree. And on this one, I'm going to call it what it is. It does look like political oustings, but I will say this. They may be justified because Zelensky does have a vision for the country. He is the leader, and while he does have to take in consideration other people's thoughts on it, including his cabinet and also his ministers' thoughts, he is ultimately the decision maker. And I don't know what was happening behind the scenes. These guys could have gotten belligerent or maybe started going a different direction that Zelensky didn't want. And he is the leader, so he has to make that call. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here and say that he made the call under proper circumstances, and that it probably wasn't motivated by bad faith. For example, someone saying something that he simply didn't like, and he just got rid of them right off the bat. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it does look like it was political oustings. We'll have to basically accept that for what it is at this point, because he basically said that. He said new energy and vision is needed, and considering that Zelensky sets the vision, that means the other people didn't agree with him on that vision. So it is what it is. I'm with the 34%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm with the 34% as well. It sounds like they were removed because they may have disagreed with something. I'm not really a big fan of that, but at the same time, it is what it is in wartime. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit in the Pokrovsk front, where we got to see the 47th taking some time to repair a Bradley. Check this out. Please tell me that's not music. It's music. All right, we're going to be muting that. But we can see them here working on that Bradley. I mean, really
sound like industrial horror music.
Dude, that's what I sound like when I snore, man. Like, I'll be in my bed, I'll be going... It's like, it's the Tron snore. But we can see them here.
Let's see here. I saw a good question out of the live chat real quick. It's from Jared Kinney Jr. He said, so Zelensky is the leader until the war is over, until the end of time. It's until the war is over. Currently, right now, he does have basically an administration in place that will last until the end of the war, or at least until the current regime is over, the wartime regime. So he will be there. And technically, under Ukraine's constitution, they can't hold elections during this time period, during the war. So, you know, you can disagree or agree with that, but that is Ukraine's law. So he will be there until the war is over, unless he decides to voluntarily hold elections and maybe perhaps amend the constitution.
And that is true. And meanwhile, moving on to our next clip, we did get to see smoke rising over Pokrovsk after Russian shelling started to hit the town today. You can see this person driving on through. We can see the smoke pretty much filling up the entire southern quarter of the town. We can also see the classic Ukrainian heating pipe. Soviet classic blend.
It's a long-lasting smoke.
And a long-lasting pipe.
Long-lasting administration.
And a long-lasting presidency. Oh, and there's the fire.
And there's someone hanging out down there by it.
Are the Ukrainians arsonists as well? Like, I'm interested. But,
it runs in the blood,
but anyway, maybe all Eastern Europeans are arsonists. It's like, who knows? They seem to like a fire. But anyways, moving on from that and into the next clip, we did get to see Ukrainian T-64 firing on the Russians. This one from the Fighting 93rd. Check it out. We can now see them getting ready to fire again. Boom! We can actually see the flight of the shell across the field. You hear their machine gun laying down a little heat. And the powder residue from that gun firing is quite significant.
It's quite clanky.
We now see them on the move. Oh!
Oh, I now see a bird.
Dang, that was one hell of an outro right there. It just like popped him out of the blue, man. We were watching that tank drive away and then just went. It's like, dang, man, the nuclear reactor turned on. But we also got to see a Ukrainian T-64 pushing a burning Russian MT-LB out of the way to clear a path forward. No copyright. But we can also see a railway bridge above them, and look at that. I mean, that's actually a pretty decent railway bridge, but we can see the T-64 pushing around that MT-LB down there, spreading that gasoline around and getting that fire nice and good, and they just blew up in front of the T-64. But that ain't stopping them. They're going to make it through. One more little shove, and it should be out of the way. They're going to back up a little bit, make their way around. Hopefully the fire doesn't engulf the whole tank.
And now they're cooking like a broiler.
And no, actually they're not, Matthew. They are pushing their way on through like legends. Look at them. It's like working construction out here. And in a second, one more push, they'll be through. Actually, they just blasted the MTLB to try and get through. Man, they're driving this tank around like I would in War Thunder. Pretty impressive stuff. Once again, life imitates art. I'm just kidding with that, by the way. But we can see them now getting out of there, actually, and deploying some smoke as they go. And that's the end of the clip. So that's interesting to see. But moving on from that and into our next clip near Kalinove, we also got to see that a Russian column ended up getting destroyed today by the 21st Separate Purpose Battalion of the 59th Brigade. Check this out. This is the Presidential Brigada. The Brigada. I just mixed up Ukrainian and English right there. This is the Presidential Brigade, or as it's called in Ukrainian, the Prezidentska Brigada, which is the Presidential Brigade in Ukrainian. And we see them just wiping out this Russian column. I mean, they are wiping this group out. Look at them go.
They're mopping the floor out here.
Man, I wonder... Oh, wait a minute. Sadly, I don't have time to wonder. The clip is over. But they still ended up wiping that group out. Pretty impressive to see. And once again showing us that this front seems to be hitting very heavy resistance today and maybe coming to a complete stop here in the near future. Moving on from that and towards Solotke, we also got to see a turtle tank getting blasted. Check this out. Here's the tank. Here comes the drone. The drone hits the shed, and the shed blows up.
The shed was full of explosives. Oh, that's terrible. Look, it just blew the sheet metal right off of it.
Yeah, it turned into scrapyard blade. It's like...
It is literally rapid disassembly. All that junkyard equipment's just all over the ground.
Man, it's an instant junkyard. No mess, no fuss.
Wait a minute, was that a turret toss too?
No, it was a little turret toss. I mean, an itty bitty turret toss. And that's the end of that clip, but there we go. Pretty nice to see. Meanwhile, we got to see that the Russians have now returned to World War I in the Volodar area, and they are ordering mass infantry assaults across the open field. This is a video clip taken today from Ukraine. Well, actually, I believe this is actually a Russian drone, but it's filming their own guys making the heroic charge across no man's land. No joke, across no man's land towards Volodar while under heavy artillery fire. This literally looks like something out of World War I, and no one will tell me otherwise. Here's the clip. The Russians are running forward in a giant group, artillery exploding all around them. Looks like something straight out of a World War I movie here.
And we see the Ukrainians are not operating World War I. They have TV.
They're like, look at them go out there. This is like history in the making. And it really is, because these guys are about to get mowed down in swamps. We can see them continuing to watch the Russians as they storm their way across no man's land. Another wave coming in and beginning their assault as well. And there they go on the run down through no man's land. And so, that's the end of the clip, but we welcome the Russians to the year 1915. But moving on out of the Volodar area and a little bit further on down and into Kherson, we also got to see a new drone today in use with the 38th Brigade using the SuperCam surveillance system. Trap remix. I'm just kidding. That's not trap. That's synth. But we can see them here using the SuperCam, and it is really a SuperCam. We see that thing's got a low battery, probably because it flew about 6,000 feet up in the air. But we see that they finally spotted a drone, and they're coming in on that thing. They're going to take it on out. And, dead on the nail.
That drone looks like something from the Wunderwaffe. What the hell was that?
It was a flying wing, Matthew. It was a flying wing.
It's a Horton.
It was a Horton. It was a Ho 229. Man, that's what you say after the person at the bar gives you their number and their area code is 229. I got a Ho 229. But anyways, moving on from that and up into the Kyiv area, we also got to see the address from President Volodymyr Zelensky today on day 924 of the war. And so, without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Give me a speech. I want a speech, please. Give me a speech.
Українці, українки.
Oh, there's no English track. Hey, let's go. Well, let me rewind that then. And let me start it from here. And so without further ado, here's the speech.
Дорогі українці, українки, на цей час вже завершені рятувальні роботи у Львові і Кривому Розі, де сьогодні постраждали люди через російські ракетні удари. Були пошкоджені звичайні будинки, звичайна цивільна інфраструктура, багато постраждалих. Усім надано необхідну допомогу. На жаль, у Львові загинули 7 людей. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Важливо, щоб світ бачив цей терор і реагував на нього. На все, що Росія робить проти наших людей, проти нашої держави. Я вдячний усім політичним та громадським діячам. Вдячний кожному лідеру, які підтримують Україну і українців і засуджують російський терор. І також дякую усім журналістам України, Європи і світу, усім, хто правдиво говорить про те, що відбувається, про цю війну і про те, як важливо захищати життя. Сьогодні в Україні з візитом був глава уряду Ірландії. Він був не тільки в Києві, але й в Гостомелі та Бородянці. Він бачив, що принесла російська війна в Україну. І сьогодні ми підписали з Ірландією двосторонню безпекову угоду, змістовну, як і потрібно. Це вже 26-та така угода. Хоч Ірландія у військовому відношенні держава нейтральна, але політично, економічно та у гуманітарній сфері ми співпрацюємо активно і будемо працювати ще активніше. Зафіксовано обсяг підтримки для України від Ірландії на цей рік. Ми домовились робити більше разом і для того, щоб санкції проти Росії за цю війну ставали міцніші, і для того, щоб відбудова в Україні йшла активніше. Я запропонував Ірландії детальніше розглянути можливість патронату над відновленням одного з наших регіонів. Звичайно, дуже цінно, що суспільство Ірландії, політичний клас знатимуть, що відбувається в Україні і що саме потрібно, щоб якнайшвидше завершити цю війну. Була сьогодні доповідь головкому Сирського. Як і щодня, по кожній частині фронту. Предметно щодо Покровська, Торецька, Курахівського напрямку, окремо операція в Курській області. І дуже важливо, що абсолютно всі визначені завдання нашої Курської операції реалізовуються. Дякую за це кожному солдату, кожному сержанту, кожному офіцеру, які залучені. І станом на зараз ця наша операція продовжує бути найбільшим поповненням обмінного фонду. Завдяки одному напрямку. І сьогодні ж була продовжена евакуація наших людей з Близького Сходу, з Лівану. 11 дітей, 14 дорослих. Вже в безпеці. І наші дипломати та розвідка допомагатимуть і надалі. Усі українці в регіоні, які цього потребують, можуть звернутися до наших дипломатичних установ на Близькому Сході і отримати все необхідне, всю допомогу, все сприяння. Ще одне. Ми готуємо важливі зустрічі з партнерами. Те, що може і повинно зміцнити наші позиції. Не лише України, але й усіх нас в Європі, усіх нас в світі, хто прагне реального завершення цієї війни і реальної спільної роботи, щоб безпека більше ніколи не руйнувалась. Цей тиждень, наступний, весь вересень мають бути результативними для усіх нас. І передусім це стосується ППО, наших можливостей на фронті та у відновленні. Ми готуємо змістовні речі. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто з Україною. Дякую всім, хто воює і працює дійсно на 100%, працює, щоб захистити нашу незалежність, наших людей. Слава Україні!
And Herom
Herom
Slava.
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 924 of the war. And that is wrapping up our little news segment here. And it's moving us on into the little question segment, the fun little question segment that we have at the end of every stream. But before we get into that, though, I do have some important housekeeping rules that I have to share with you all. More so some housekeeping updates or a general report that we have to give to all of y'all every single day until this happens. This channel will be ceasing for a short while. Not permanently, but for a very short while coming up here in the future. During that time, we will not be able to run live streams, and we may be able to put out some videos, but we're not really sure how many of them. We're kind of hoping right now, at least I don't really know if this is going to happen, but we are actually kind of hoping that while we are gone on this vacation, the China-Taiwan video will finally come out. I'm not really sure. I've been trying to check with with our video editor and see if that is actually finally done cooking. If it's done cooking, then, well, if it's getting really close to being done cooking, y'all probably can expect for us to have that video out here really soon, probably while we are gone. But let me tell y'all when we will be gone, so that way when y'all know, we will not be able to be on air. We will be able to create some short war summaries, probably not a lot of them, because on a part of our trip, it may be really hard to do something like that, but we will be able to try and put some out nevertheless, especially if something big happens. So let me tell y'all when the streams will be canceled, what days they will not be running, so that way y'all better know when y'all can see a stream. And so these days are not going to be having streams. September 14th, September 15th, September 16th, September 17th, and September 18th. And we may or may not be back on air on September 19th. If we are not back on air on September 19th, you can count for us to be back on air on September 20th. We will be gone from the 14th to the 18th on a vacation. This is very unprecedented, probably taking a lot of people by shock, even though we've been saying this, I think, for about the past week or so. But it may be taking people by shock because we have never taken a vacation before. Over the entire 3 years that we've been doing this, we have never left this this house, really this basement, much. We've pretty much been doing this every single day that we've been able to, and it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to do something like this. I never thought at a single point in my life that I would end up actually running a show, and much less actually having a job, getting to talk to people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people every single month about the news and what's going on in the world. That was never once really in my mind as a permanent kind of a goal or something that I really wanted to achieve in my life. But crazily enough, it was kind of thrown in front of Matthew and me, and we ended up doing it, and we ended up doing it incredibly well, apparently, because a lot of people have ended up subscribing, and a lot of people ended up watching. Just last month, 9.9 million people watched this channel from the very first day of that month to the last day of that month. That is insane to see that. About 10 million people, a group of people larger than the state of New York, ended up watching the show. Well, actually larger than New York City specifically. New York State's a little bit bigger than that. But that was absolutely crazy. And it's been absolutely insane to be able to be on this trip with every single one of y'all, to get to see so many new people joining our channel, to get to know about so many of y'all, to get to tell all of y'all about the news and have y'all tell us incredibly interesting stuff, to go through all the great times and the somewhat sadder times that we've had few and far in between here in the community on this channel. It has been absolutely incredible, and we've loved every single minute of it, and we've appreciated every single moment of it. But we are getting a little bit tired. Our batteries are getting a little low. To be honest, mine isn't that low tonight. I think it's because I really had a heck of an amount of coffee before I came on air. So that may be why I'm not feeling that drained battery-wise. But we will be taking a little bit of a break to recharge our batteries after 3 years of doing this pretty much every day and working 7 days a week, just about. We will finally have a short break, and then we will come back and we will be running this thing full time again, just like we have been, and probably will not be taking a vacation for that much of a while longer. Although I will tell y'all, though, at least in the background, we are kind of waffling around on the idea of maybe taking more scheduled breaks like this. They wouldn't happen often. They probably would happen every year or twice a year, where we would end up taking time off of this channel and really scheduling that way in advance so that way all of y'all would know. And not only scheduling it in advance so that way y'all would know, but also so that way we could spend some of our time behind the scenes making videos and content that y'all could watch while we are away. Probably some form of documentaries or something like that to put out every few days while we would be gone. Because while we have been able to do this for 3 years, Matthew and me have been talking in the background that we did not really realize how tired we actually were until we actually got the vacation like marked down on the calendar, and then we realized that there was an actual moment coming up soon where we could breathe. And then that's kind of when our energy sort of imploded, to be entirely honest, and we've been really like dragging ourselves along up until this vacation's coming around. So we are kind of considering maybe we'll take a vacation every year, or maybe we'll take a vacation every 6 months. It won't be incredibly long vacations, by the way. It's not going to be like we're gone for like weeks or a month or something like that. It would probably just be a week long at best, or shorter than that. But we are considering that just so that way we can make sure to not burn ourselves out completely and, you know, just end up having the channel collapse because we literally cannot continue to function at that point anymore. But we don't know. We might end up taking this vacation and it ends up satisfying us enough that we end up doing this literally for 3 more straight years until we take another one. We really don't know. We'll have to kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. But I do want y'all to know when we will not be on air coming up really soon. From the 14th to the 18th, we will not be running streams, and we may not be running a stream on the 19th either, but we'll have to play that one by ear. But with that, I hope I was able to get that out to y'all incredibly well. I hope everyone knows that, and make sure to spread that around. Don't tell people that we're quitting YouTube. Just tell them we will not be running live streams from the 14th to the 18th, because we are going to be back. It's just that during those days we won't have a stream. It'll be like the world's ending. I know it will be. I know that we'll probably feel like the world's ending a little bit when we're not here running a stream. But, you know, it is what it is, and we will be back really soon. And so with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the stream, the most highly anticipated part of the stream, the final question segment. And believe it or not, get this, we have no polls to address. We're fresh out of polls, and it's now time to move right into our Super Chat segment, the final one of the night, and then grab some live chat questions after that. So, jumping right into our first Super Chat here, this one goes to Fro, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Fro, for supporting the channel very bigly the last couple of days. We appreciate it and notice it, and of course, that $50 support is appreciated. And Fro says, well, I stuttered to hell, let me try to get a grip here. They said, Enforcer Matt, my question is, if Putin offs himself, or someone else does us the favor, who takes over, and will the local overlords start throwing out nukes if Russia progresses for land grabs?
That's an interesting question, Fro. If I had to answer that question, we don't know. That's actually probably the best answer I can give. We have no idea who would end up taking over Russia, because Putin kind of rose from nowhere to be the vice president, or really the prime minister, Boris Yeltsin. And then he ended up becoming the president of Russia not that long after. And no one's ever really been able to take that position from him since. Neither was really anyone able to actually take the position from Boris Yeltsin. So Boris Yeltsin just ended up blasting the Russian Congress pretty much at that point into submission. So to answer that question, I would say that in my opinion, what I would believe to be the case is that it could be anyone. Because in a Russian dictatorship or in a Chinese dictatorship like we see these days, literally any junior member of their party, like the United Russia Party, or I believe that's what it's called. Isn't it, Matthew, the United Russia Party or something like that?
I believe so, yeah.
But the United Russia Party is the one that's in charge in Russia. It's pretty much a uniparty system. And anyone from that party could end up being the leader of Russia. Just kind of like how Xi Jinping, during the power struggles of his day, was a nobody. Like he was a minor party member and a minor bureaucrat inside of Beijing, one of tens of thousands. And he somehow ended up climbing the rank against everyone in China, everyone in Beijing, to end up being the president of China and the president and the chairman of the Chinese Security Committee. But beyond that, it still is something that we can never really predict well, because, you know, you could always go with the people who are big names. You could be like, oh, it would be Trotsky, or it would be so-and-so. And then Stalin ends up coming out of nowhere, and he ends up being the leader of the Soviet Union. And that's another one where someone just rose out of nowhere. Because if you looked at the Soviet government at the time when Lenin was dying, you would have gone, oh, it's quite clear Trotsky would be the one who's going to be leading the Soviet Union because he's much more known. Like, he's clearly far more influential. He's much more known. But then Stalin has really nothing in the Communist Party. Like, the general secretary at that point in the Communist Communist Party in the Soviet Union was a nothing position. It was literally just a position to give him a position because he had been so influential in the lead up to the revolution, but it was a position that was supposed to mean nothing. And Stalin ended up manipulating things where the general secretary position was the most important position because he was able to largely schedule appointments and get to talk to people because he was the one who would schedule them. And so that's how he ended up being the leader of Russia, although he was completely unknown really beforehand. Another person who really rose out of nowhere was Napoleon. He's a great example of a guy who rose out of nowhere. No one knew who Napoleon was. Like, no one went, oh yeah, that guy from Corsica, that for the French, that redneck dumb nobody who's like unkempt and has no manners and doesn't understand how things work in France. Yeah, that guy's going to end up being the emperor of France by the end of the revolution. No one ever thought that. No one even knew Napoleon existed. Like, y'all all have to remember, Napoleon hardly got into any kind of a military academy in France because he was a Corsican, and at the time, the French people really didn't like the Corsicans. That kind of still holds over nowadays. But then, he gets to France, he gets in the army, and he ends up being a very, very junior level artillery officer, really in charge of about half a battery. And out of that, he ended up rising through the ranks to become the Emperor of France. He really came from nowhere. And Hitler kind of came out of nowhere too. Just some guy. He was a corporal in the German army in World War I. There was a lot of people who were corporals in the Imperial German army in World War I. And he ends up working for the Weimar government, ends up finding about the Nazi Party, ends up then leading the Nazi Party, ends up conducting the beer hall putsch down in Munich. And then at that point, when he got arrested in the Nazi Party ended up getting crushed by the Weimar government in an armed resistance, then he got put in jail, and everyone went, that's it for him. He's been put in jail. Everyone's going to forget about the guy. I mean, he was hardly even an influential person. The Nazi Party wasn't even known at that point, even outside of Munich, really, or really in Germany for that matter, because it was so insignificant. But somehow, some way, which it really is like this whole explanation of how it's not like somehow, some way there was actually like a whole thing that happened with this. Hitler ended up rising up the German political stature up to the very top, ended up largely winning the Nazi Party most of the seats in the Bundestag, and then ended up catching, well, some people say that he did, we really don't know, but then the Reichstag, which is the German parliament building, ended up catching on fire, burning to the ground, and Hitler used that as an excuse to blame the communists, and then he dissolved the Bundestag, and then ended up running Germany pretty much as a dictatorship from that point, but still rose from nothing. That's the most important thing you can get out of all these people. They rose from nothing and into something. And so, for that reason, when talking about any kind of a dictatorship, it's completely impossible to know who in the world could end up leading Russia, because there are tons of little people out there that we know nothing about that are so insignificant, there's not even a Wikipedia page on them, and that person could end up being the leader of Russia who's next in line. So to answer that question with a whole bunch of historical examples, we have absolutely no idea who would end up leading Russia. And I would say the local overlords would not end up throwing nukes. They probably never would, because a lot of them know that if one of them threw nukes, the rest of them would throw nukes, and it ends up being mutually assured destruction, just localized inside of Russia. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support.
Unfortunately, something oddly enough, you talk about people coming from nowhere and turning into something. I just learned the other day, and I didn't know this. I'm sure people in the live chat probably knew this, but I just learned this yesterday because I don't study Ukraine's government structure that closely, except for just the big people that we know about, like Zelensky and stuff like that. But I found out yesterday that the burly fellow that we keep seeing on video, he's sitting out in the audience whenever Zelensky's giving a speech. He's actually the head of the Verkhovna Rada, which is their legislature, basically. And his name is Ruslan Stefanchuk. And he's a close ally of Zelensky. And he's actually the next who would be taking Zelensky's place if something were to happen to him. So I actually didn't know that yesterday. A fellow that we've been talking about the whole time is actually the next in line. So if something happened to Zelensky, he would be taking his place. So that's sort of an unknown character, at least to me, sort of unknown, that might take power if something were to happen.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean it's kind of a little concerning though. It's like is he going to just go up there and go, oh yeah? It's like, is that going to be like his government policy? I don't know. Like I have no clue. And also I see people bringing up Mussolini. Yeah, he came out of nowhere too. A lot of people came out of nowhere. Like one thing that a lot of people don't know. I just want to put this out there is that let me think of a couple of presidents that came out of nowhere. George Washington wasn't really like, oh wow, he came out of nowhere. It was actually kind of like fated that he was going to be the one, and he was one of the more influential businessmen in Virginia at the time. So it was kind of obvious he was going to end up being a leading influential person in the American government. Thank God it was him, by the way, because who in the world knows how it would have gone. Like, for example, if it was John Adams, who immediately came in and tried to pass the Alien and Sedition Act. Remember that, Matthew? And then the Supreme Court had to shoot that down. Be like, no, that's unconstitutional.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah.
It was just like yesterday.
Yeah, it was just like yesterday, man. We were around for that. It was crazy. But, and there, thank the Lord it was George Washington, because if it was anyone else, we could have gone the way of, say, a South American country where a dictator pretty much ended up being the first leader and setting a bit of a precedent. But some American presidents really did come out of nowhere. To bring up a few examples, probably one of the more recent ones, and while this is a modern political figure, I'll still bring him up, because he's probably one of the better examples, would be Richard Nixon. Because Richard Nixon actually grew up in a very, very poor family. Like, I mean, wildly poor, to the point he walked around barefoot to school and back because he couldn't even afford shoes. That kind of a poor. And he ended up coming from a poor family like that and really rising to somehow end up being the nominee for his party and then winning the election for president at the time, which was pretty crazy. Like that's pretty unheard of most of the time, especially in American politics, at least for people who end up becoming presidents. It's usually a crapshoot to have someone who has that kind of a background. But for him, he ended up doing it. So, people can rise out of nothing, from nowhere, and end up being something. It can always happen. It's just that sometimes it's more rare than others. But in dictatorships, that's usually the norm, actually. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. Of course, by the way, no politics. I only brought up Nixon to bring up an example of someone who came from nothing and then ended up becoming the president of the U.S., and it was really the only example that could come to mind really quickly. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kevin Sparrow, who puts in a $28 donation, and thank you very much, Kevin, as well, who's an old guard, by the way, for that support. He said, I came across the channel the first night of the war, and I haven't missed a stream since, and you and Matt have done an amazing job keeping us informed, and all the best from Delta, BC, and please take a question from the chat, and Slav Ukraine. And thank you for the kind words, Kevin. I appreciate that.
And Slav Ukraine, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible, and I got to thank you so much for supporting it, because if it wasn't for folks like you who had been watching for such a long time and had been here for such a while, we wouldn't be able to make things like this possible for 924 days. And I got to thank you for still being here with us, Kevin Sparrow, and thank you so much for enjoying us keeping everyone informed, and also being from Delta in British Columbia. And so Delta in British Columbia in Canada. Where is that? That is a delta. No joke. It's literally just a delta. And so, and it's in Vancouver, well, South Vancouver. It's actually kind of close to Seattle, or really more so like Olympia. Well, wait, hang on. Isn't Olympia further north than Seattle, or am I getting that wrong?
I don't really know anything about this place, but I really haven't looked at it very much, to be honest with you. I don't know anything about Washington.
I've looked at it a little bit. But let's see here. What happened? Let's drop down and just take a look at this. Oh, wow, this is really nice. What do you know? It's like a 1970s America, kind of, It's like got the cars and everything. Not bad, not bad. But anyways, Pretty cool, pretty neat place. And it's right near Gun Island and Kirkland Island. So I guess this is where Costco works, is from Kirkland Island, and then Gun Island's where Remington's from. I don't know. I'm just taking guesses here. And then Barber Island's where you get haircuts, and then Duck Island's where you get foie gras or whatever the hell it's called. But anyway, so that, and then we got Shady Island. That's where Hot Dog Man lives.
Aw, man. Slim Shady Island. Aw, man.
Aw, man, I'm really gonna go out there this time and make a name for myself. Hey, get the hell out of here! Aw, dang it, foiled again. Or something like that. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the kind words as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Oliver Queen, who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, Oliver Queen, for that support as well. They said, so in Ukraine news, Belarus shooting drones for the last few weeks, but it's a first evidence that they do that. I assume Ukraine somehow found a way how to crack Russian drones and send them to Belarus. I don't know how, but it's working. And also adding to the previous message, it will force Belarus to act and shows allies that they can do the same, and Russia will look stupid, as always.
And I thank you for the support, Oliver Queen, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, we don't really know if that's the case. We really don't know a lot. We know that the Russian drones, and they did end up getting shot down near the area of Gomel, but we really don't know a lot beyond that, like Ukraine being able to hack into them or something like that, because that could have been the Russians deliberately flying them over Gomel, maybe for a new attack vector, or maybe they got the coordinates wrong, and then the Belarusians just ended up shooting them down. So I would have to say, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it really is news. Well, like, also, they haven't been doing it for weeks, though. They've only been doing it for about 5 or 6 days. And this is the first time we've ever gotten video or picture evidence to really confirm it. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And a super chat from Cliff H. And thank you very much, Cliff, for that $22 support as well. And he said, please dust the crystal balls and predict what Russian territories Ukraine will be holding as of next June 1st, 2025. And how far will they go, or what will they withdraw? And LSA.
And Cliff H, you know I'm not one to use the crystal balls. And, you know, I can dust off the crystal balls, but, whoa, hey, take it easy. We don't want any Weinstein up in here. Anyways, to answer your question. All right, to answer your question. Where in the world would they be? Well, by June 1st, they may have taken Pokrovsk, or they may still be right on the outskirts of Pokrovsk. You never know. Battles like this usually take about a year. So they probably would still be fighting the Battle of Pokrovsk. Beyond that, this front line will probably look the same, in my opinion. I don't really see a lot changing. Usually changes are actually very few and far in between at this point in the war on the front line by and large. So I'd be assuming that the front line would probably look very similar to what it is right now by about next year. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. Thank you for being an old guard and a channel legend, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Gunfox61, the longtime channel legend, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you, Gunfox, for that support. He said Sunday 2 September, or 2nd of September, to Thursday 6th of September, 1666, Great London Fire. Oh, ye gods. He said, blame Matt for this. Blame me. So they always blame me. And also he said, Reading Company, Reading Lines, NS 1067476, Middle Ages begin as Rome's child emperor is overthrown overthrown and questioned from the chat, and Geronimo surrenders, 1886.
And let's see here. A red line. Oh, you got a little locomotive for me. I like it. I like it. It's an SD-72. Very, very common, actually, in the Union Pacific Fleet. But let me show this to you. Let me see here. I gotta find the specific one. Because this is a Norfolk Southern Heritage unit, meaning that it's a modern locomotive with an older paint job. So let me see if I can find one for y'all. Let's see here. Hang on, y'all. I gotta go find the specific thing. Let's see here. I'd be dipped. They don't really have a lot of information on the locomotive itself, but we do have a pretty cool picture here of the thing. So this is the Reading Lines service, the B line service, or at least the heritage livery for it. It's actually pretty cool looking, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I take it back. I actually don't like that.
What? Why not?
I don't like the colors. It looks like a fertilizer like company or something.
Get the hell out of here, Matthew. This looks cool. I like it. I think it's neat. But you know one thing I do like, though? I do like the Santa Fe, let's see here, War Bonnet. War Bonnet. And let me see here. Let me see if I can go find this. Oh, yeah. So they actually do have a legacy version of this. This is the BNSF Heritage Paint Scheme for the Santa Fe. I think it looks really cool.
Huh. Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I like CSX's colors that they put on their trains. And I like the normal BNSF like scheme as well.
Honestly, man, I think I like the Santa Fe better than BNSF. BNSF's orange paint job, it looks cool for a short duration, but it doesn't really look cool for that long, you know?
I mean, you have a point.
Like, you
No,
know,
I like this one. I like that one.
I mean, it's all right. Yeah, I mean, it's all right. But you know, one company that I think has like the worst is Kansas City Southern, and let me go see if I can show you all this. No, not their new paint job. I need to find their old paint job. I need to find the one that's just like depressing gray, like this one. Like I need to find that paint job on an actual locomotive. Here we go. Yeah, this is terrible. This is the worst. Like, this is like as bad as Louisville and Nashville right here with a stupid gray livery with the red lettering. Like, that's bad.
I wish they would like paint up a train, kind of like they do the livery on like the Warthog with like the shark mouth at the front of it, like on both sides. That would be so sick if they did that, and also paint it like with some scheme on the back that looks pretty cool.
I mean, that might be kind of neat. You know, maybe. But you know, one company I think that really wins out on the drip competition is Norfolk Southern with the all-black paint livery that they have for their locomotives. I think that this may be one of the drippiest looking kind of liveries that there is in American rail freight.
Yeah, it's drippy. It's causing some slicks on the track. It's so drippy.
Man, this thing is so drippy. I think they have like the highest accident rates in the country outside of CSX. I think, like it's drippy, but interestingly enough, actually speaking of BNSF in kind of a positive way, the rail safety review came out from the federal government. I think 3 days ago for them, and so far, out of all the rail companies they've reviewed, which is just Union Pacific and BNSF, BNSF has the highest safety rating by far at this point. Like they're beating Union Pacific by a massive margin. I think the next group to be reviewed under the federal safety review is Norfolk Southern, and CSX is last. I'm assuming that CSX will come last because they almost always do. Because you can literally look into the news any single day, and I'm sure they had a derailment. Let me go put in CSX news right now.
Well, Norfolk Southern, I think, was the company that did the derailment in East Palestine, I think.
Yeah, they were the ones who did it, but CSX, I think by far, like, I think it's Norfolk Southern and CSX who were, like, tied for last out of, like, the four, the 5 class ones there are. I think they're really, like, tied for last for, like, the safety ratings because they are not that good. Let me see if I can find y'all some more news here. Let's see, hang on. I'm trying to see. They just came to a labor agreement, with some of the unions, and let me see here. Dang, it looks like they actually have not had a derailment for a few days now. This is crazy. Hang on. There's no way. Because, like, every time I Google them, they always have, like, a derailment. Why be danged? They have not had a derailment for, like, a week. So, I can't find anything on that. That's crazy. That's wild. But, CSX, let's see, Dark Future is probably what you're talking about. It's like these right here.
Yeah, I like those. That's like an iconic one to me.
Yeah, because we're from the South. Like, so we see these things all day, every day, without end. Dark Future is pretty cool. I'll be honest, though. I kind of like that little gray livery thing they had going on back when we were kids. I thought that was kind of a cool look, too.
Yeah, I like all those. It's like nostalgic. I don't know why, but the CSX livery makes the train look menacing for some reason. I don't know why, but more so than the others.
A little bit. Like, I would say so,
Aw.
yeah. I mean, dude, I hit those high notes right there. But let's see. Then there was Chessie System. which we saw a little bit as a kid, like when we were really, really little kids. We used to see these, but they had already been merged with CSX. But I think these were really cool.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing these ever.
I think I remember seeing these like once or twice. We didn't see them a lot, but they were pretty cool. I think they were pretty neat. And they do have a heritage unit in CSX, the chassis system heritage CSX locomotive, which is neat. But I don't like that they only like halfway did the paint job, because the front of the cab is still CSX Dark Future. They only like painted up the back half, and it wasn't even really that good of a paint job, as you can see where it was like poorly done right there on the merge. So, you know.
Oh, well, check this one out. Pterosaur said, check out the late 80s CSX stealth scheme for ugly.
CSX. Oh, God. Oh, God! Oh, that is like Kansas City Southern depressing gray right there. Ew!
I also want to make a train stealth, like a stealth livery for a train. It sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, you know, usually companies actually try and make their trains as bright as possible to avoid incidents at level crossings, so that way idiots don't drive out in front of the train and get creamed by it and killed. So that seems like it's going against the grain on that, but this is hideous. Like, this is
CSX was looking for people to get.
CSX was cruising for a bruise in there, like, we want to kill you. Like, that's not good. That's not a good look. But dang. Let's see here. You know, a really cool, another cool livery that existed, in my opinion, was Southern Pacific's, like Final Days liveries, if you want to call them that. Let me see if I can find like a good example. This is a scale model, but this kind of a livery, I thought that was really cool.
What about the Pacific Union? Or Union Pacific?
The Pacific Union. Like, we're the Union of the Pacific, and we want our jobs. But let's see. Union Pacific, it's iconic. I mean, who in the world can dislike Union Pacific? That yellow color, like, everyone knows Union Pacific.
Yeah, I like this one. I like it a lot. I have the model of this one, so I'm a little biased.
Yeah, he's a little biased.
I have the one with the flag on the side of it, I think. The American flag.
Yeah, you do, actually. And I think they ended up discontinuing that livery, because that was actually a specific livery where they would have the American flag painted onto all of the sides of their locomotives. I think they went back in the modern day to just putting Union Pacific in bold on the side of their locomotives like this one.
Yeah, I like this one too. I like them all, really.
I mean, dude, they're cool. I mean, like, they're really neat. Union Pacific's got a thing going with their paint job. I don't think anyone could dislike it. Also, no one could dislike that goofy-ass DDX40 thing that they made. That was like 2 diesel engines put together onto one, like, locomotive. That thing's insane. I think it has like 6,000 horsepower or something. It's nuts. And I think it's neat. I think it's cool. But still, not bad. Also, one more company honorable mention, by the way. Just a really, really honorable mention is Burlington Northern, which got merged with Santa Fe Railroad to create BNSF like we know it nowadays. That's why BNSF is BNSF, because it's Burlington Northern Santa Fe. But this is what the old Burlington Northern units used to look like, or their paint job, and I think it's really neat. Like, that green color is really cool, and not only that, they operated in the American Northwest, where it's really green and luscious, so they kind of blended in for the large part with their surroundings, and so they looked really, really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. But beyond that, the Great Fire of London. I know that Gunfox put that in just because he wanted me to talk about the Great Fire of London, and I also wanted to bring up something really cool about this. I'm not going to go through the whole Great Fire of London, but there is a pretty big monument in London for the Great Fire, like the actual place it started in. And so let me see, the Great Fire monument right here. This thing is cool. It's a giant pillar, or a giant column that they built as a monument. And you can actually walk up to the flame at the top. It's a pretty long walk, though, up the stairs. But it's a giant monument that was erected for the Great Fire of London in 1666. The fire started, what they believe, in a baker's store, and the fire then started to rapidly spread, and it pretty much burned down the entire town. Tens of thousands of people ended up dying in the fire, because they couldn't escape the blaze. It literally consumed almost the entirety of the city in about 3 days. And one building that was specifically affected, but in a really good way, was St. Paul's Cathedral, because St. Paul's Cathedral didn't look like it always did. It actually was completely different before the fire. So let me go see if I can find y'all a little illustration of St. Paul's Cathedral before the fire. And here we go. this is actually what St. Paul's Cathedral looked like before the Great Fire. And it existed in this condition all the way up until 1666. And the fire ended up consuming the spire and also a couple of other elements of the cathedral. It ended up pretty much completely destroying it. And so then there was an architect that was commissioned to pretty much rebuild the cathedral. And so he ended up rebuilding it in a Baroque or Rococo. It was more so Baroque, but Baroque Rococo mixed style of a cathedral, which is what we have now in London in the modern day St. Paul's Cathedral right here. And I would have to say that, in my opinion, this modern day cathedral post Great Fire actually ends up beating out the old St. Paul's, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I was just trying to figure out why they're calling it the Great Fire. It doesn't seem great. It seems like it was bad.
Man, it was great because it was the biggest damn fire anyone had ever seen in their life. They were like, this is a great ass fire. Like, this thing's huge. But beyond that, the inside of this cathedral is absolutely incredible. We actually got to see this when we went to London one time, and it is impressive. It's actually one of the biggest cathedrals in the world in terms of internal volume. And also, I think it was a few years ago, someone actually died in this thing. They fell off of one of the top levels of the dome, and ended up falling like 140 feet through the air. Let me see. I think I can actually show you all this in here. It was from somewhere up here, I believe. But there's a little area where you can walk around up here on the dome. They ended up leaning a little bit too far over the rail. They ended up falling, and they fell the whole 141 feet down to the floor, right in front of everyone, and slammed onto the floor and got killed instantly. Pretty horrific thing to happen in there. But beyond that, this is an absolutely gorgeous cathedral. Really, really beautiful. I think it's better than really the one that came before, for sure. But the Great Fire changed a lot in London. It really changed the entire city. And that's also why, if a lot of y'all go to Britain, and you'll go to London, y'all will be like, oh, there's not really a lot of medieval buildings around. They're kind of like a little rare. And that's why, because pretty much all of them ended up getting burned in the Great Fire. And then they rebuilt afterwards. And so most of the buildings inside of London will be about as old as the 1700s or the 1600s. That's about as old as they'll get. If you see any buildings before that existed, then you're getting into ancient grounds, really, because there's very few buildings that ended up surviving the fire and then ended up surviving the Enlightenment and the Victorian era up until the modern day to be preserved as a Grade 1 heritage building. So pretty cool fact about that, and really kind of neat to know that the Great Fire, while being one of the most destructive elements in London's history, ended up being one of the most defining elements in London's modern day architectural history as well, and kind of how modern fire codes ended up starting to be established in any country in the world. Kind of like how France was really the one to spearhead the sewage system to a point. Britain was the one to really start to spearhead the fire codes.
Yeah, so much for the sewer system. The Seine River looks like hell.
Oh, there's a shit in the river or something like that. It's like, dude. But man, for the sewer system for the time, it was actually really impressive. You know, because you weren't mixing your poo water with the drinking water. But nowadays, it's pretty archaic. But anyway, by the way, I forgot to mention this. By the time that London actually got around to building their sewer, their architect decided to build it twice as large as they actually wanted to, because the architect said, we're only going to be able to build this once, and so it has to be right the first time. So they actually built it twice as large as it was supposed to be, and because of that, London has never had to rebuild their sewer system. It's so big underground that it actually can house and sustain the entire population of London, even as big as it is now, and all of the sewage that they produce, which is really wild when you think about it. That guy was a visionary who was designing a sewage system of all things. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Gunfox, big shout out, huge thanks for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Jackal, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jackal, for that support. And he said hi from Australia.
And hello, Jackal, to Australia. Really cool country. And a lot of our viewers actually come from Australia. About 10% of y'all or 11% of y'all do. And it's really cool to know that we have some Australians, some Aussies wrapping the set. And hopefully y'all are from Mount Ellisay City. I know that's Mount Isa or Isa City. But still, cool to know that y'all are here. And I love to know that y'all are enjoying. And a big shout out to Australia once again. And a huge thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a $20 support from Flash One, the longtime channel legend. And they said, good day to you both. And good day to you, Flash. It's good to see you once again. He said, hello, LSA. And I haven't missed a show. I just haven't been able to join the live chats. And if I could hit the like button more than once, I would. Yeah, I like that. They said, great to be here today after a 4-month holiday. And go Ukraine and live chat question, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Flash One. Good to know that you're back here in the live chat. Thank you for making the pilgrimage back onto air. And also, I have to say, please, by all means, feel okay hitting the like button once. We're just happy people can hit it once. 3,500 people have hit the like button tonight, and we're really happy to see that. And hopefully, even more people hit the like button. But of course, I have to thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Flash One. You've been here with us forever. I'm glad to hear that you had a fun 4-month vacation. I mean, 4-month vacation, that's crazy. I only know of one group of people who take that many vacations and they claim to work all the time. Isn't that crazy, Matthew? To take like a month off of the beach and then claim that you're busy working all the time? Ridiculous. Like, if you're actually working, you'd be like us. You'd be working all day, every day, and you wouldn't take a vacation. That's how it works. But beyond that, I do have to say, huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Flash One, and we will make sure to take a live chat question. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
So this one right here goes to Terrence Custer. He has a question about the Belarus situation with the drone coming in from Russia. He said, can radar differentiate between Shaheds, or Raptors, or whatever?
A radar can differentiate a little bit in cross-section size in between targets. Shahed 136s actually have a fairly sizable cross-section from what we understand, and I'm not really sure, because usually it takes some training to be able to identify cross-section sizes, or it's built into the system to be able to detect the size of the cross-section, and then it'll be able to identify the exact kind of target. But that requires specific programming into that radar system if the radar auto-identifies the error targets, even if it does at all. And so it might be hard to differentiate, to be entirely honest, at least on a Belarusian air defense system that they probably used to shoot that down. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And I thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next super chat here, we have a massive one from a viewer who's been supporting the channel a lot recently. It is Hawk. And thank you very much, Hawk, for that $100 support combined across 2 different super chats. And we have 2 super stickers. The first one is the YouTube creature on the rocket. It's flying off in the distance, and it blew up out there. That's, whoa, that poor thing. But we also have a second super sticker of the very large YouTube creature waving yellow flags for caution and destroying an entire city. Very destructive. But thank you very much, Hawk, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
They dying. But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much for the massive support, Hawk, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who make this thing possible day in and day out. And if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on this show right now, and getting to give a huge thanks and a massive appreciation to folks like you for helping us to continue to do this as a job. We work this thing day in and day out, endlessly, every single day. And one day will be the last day that we run this channel. But I hope that it's not soon. I hope it's decades into the future, really, to be entirely honest. But I gotta thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running and helping us to keep doing this as a full-time job, because folks like you who support this channel make it a reality for us to do this on a day-to-day basis. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one is going to go to Fro, who puts in that $20 donation. And thank you, Fro, as well. That is their second support of the night, by the way. Huge shout out. And Fro says, BC Skyman. That's my only comment. He's a legend. And BC is a legend. And also, you're a legend for giving him that shout out as well, because BC is known by every viewer on the channel as the longtime channel legend. So thank you, Fro, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, big thanks for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that BC Skyman is an absolute legend. BC Skyman is one of the viewers who's been around forever. I mean, and we know he's been around forever because he's been in the live chat forever. I mean, literally till the beginning of time, really. And I gotta say that I got to give you a huge thanks for shouting out BC Skyman and saying that he's an absolute legend. I also got to give a huge shout out to everyone who's been here for an incredibly long time, because all of them are channel legends. And I also got to give a big shout out to people who are in the live chat all the time and the people who are constantly supporting the channel as well, because all of y'all end up getting known really by everyone who watches this channel, and that ends up qualifying y'all as living legends of the Lee Spring Army. And so a big thanks to all of y'all once again, and a huge shout out to you as well, Pro, for giving a big thanks to BC Skyman, who's been a very big part of this channel and its community since the start. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Eason, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much for that support as well. They said, only because you're the best up-to-date news, and we love you.
And thank you, Eason, for the kind words and the support. And thank you for saying that you just want to throw in the kind words and enjoy the news that's up to date. And it is up to date. We're so up to date, people always come in every single day going, oh, here comes the clickbait. Although we literally have like videos of everything we say. And oh my goodness. That always gets me to like wince or cringe at goofy statements like that. Because it's like, does this channel have a reputation, like a history of posting clickbait? It's like, yeah, the titles sound clickbait because it's crazy that it happened. It's like, but it happened though. It's not like we're other channels where we go, oh my god, y'all, the Ukrainian special forces, they hijacked the Russian train and it had Putin on it. Oh, they're taking him back to, or something like that. It's like, we don't do that. Like, we actually say something like, oh my god, y'all, they shot down a drone over Belarus, and then we actually have a video for it. And so for that, I'm honored, and I'm happy to know. Oh, and that we flatlined right there.
We flatlined. I couldn't hear.
Oh my god. Oh. We're gonna wait to come back.
We are back. We're back.
Hey, we're back, baby. And I gotta say, big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. So thank you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have another super chat from guess who? It's Hawk once again. Well, I had the legendary voice crack. But thank you very much, Hawk, for that $50 support.
Dang.
And we appreciate it very much. I did that one on purpose that time. But he also put in a super sticker. Oh my god, there's another one.
Goodness.
Another one from Hawk. Another $50 support. No voice crack on that one. The first super chat, super sticker, is that YouTube hippo is flipping back in the chair. It's turning into a transformer, and it's going with the Japanese rising sun in the background right there. Look at that. Then the second one is somebody jumping up around here with the cheerleader stuff going on with the heart in the background. But huge shout out to Hawk. That is a combined total of $200 in support from Hawk, and we appreciate that very much. Very generous of you, and thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you about these super stickers?
And thank you very much, and that's incredibly kind of you, and I thank you greatly. I don't really know what to say, but beyond a huge thanks to you for the support, Hawk, and helping this channel to keep on running. You don't throw in comments. You're really mysterious with your support. You really enjoy the channel, apparently, and you want to help it to keep on running and help us to do this as a job, but we don't get to ever hear from you that much, because you just throw in super chats without a comment. It makes me sad because I would like to be able to talk to you, or at least respond to what you say in your super chats. But we're still greatly appreciative of your support, and I got to thank you massively for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, Hawk, who really enjoyed this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing on air day in and day out. And so a big thanks to you once again. And also, man, you know something else? I haven't checked. Speaking of, like, you know, keeping us on air and everything, about where in the world we rank in the world, well, in America at least, for viewership, because we should be showing up tonight. And there we are. There we are right there. Well, we ended up getting beaten by a couple of people. But, you know, you can't win every single night. You can only beat oh man, we beat someone, Matthew. We beat someone.
The chart.
Yeah, they're in the chart. But let's see here. Let me move this over to the screen. Here we go. So there we are, number 76 in America last night. And tonight, if we were on this graph, because we ended up getting to 12.2 thousand, we would have been up here above Agenda Free TV and just a little shy of Ben Shapiro. We end up actually getting as much viewership on our streams these days as Ben Shapiro does, which I kind of find really interesting, because doesn't, like, Ben Shapiro own, like, an entire, like, media company or something?
Yeah, it's called the Daily Wire.
Yeah, something like that. But, you know, it's kind of interesting that we end up kind of rivaling with viewership there on that. That's a little interesting. But let's see here. We ended up beating PBS. We ended up beating, let's see, don't know any of those channels. But we ended up beating Live Now from Fox. And beyond that, it looks
I
like
see who we beat. I see who the other person is we
uh-huh,
beat.
yeah, you do, don't you? But still, pretty interesting.
Some of these people on this chart right here are involved with a company that is actually funded by RT, believe it or not. Found that out today.
Really, like who?
Well, I won't say it was allegations, but if y'all seen the news today, there's some allegations that some of these like really big voices here who actually comment on the Ukraine war are involved with RT. But there's just a couple of them on this chart, not all of them.
That's interesting. Let's see who was above us. Well, we had Ben Shapiro. Hey, look, we could beat this person on a couple of days, kind of like we beat the other guy. You know, like we can actually beat both of them. That's a little weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy, and beat them in the viewership. That is.
Yeah, beat them in the viewership. Yeah, we didn't want to come off that way. Beat them in the viewership is what I mean. But let's see. We ended up losing out to. Wow, that's rare. Usually we end up beating Kansas Owens by like a long shot usually, but today we got beat. We got bested. Disney Junior beat us. Spaceflight Now beat us. Let's see here. Ludwig beat us. That's kind of expected. He's got like 5 million subs. Timcast ended up beating us. Darman ended up beating us. Nerd Steals Hot Guy from The Pretty Girl. Okay, that's an interesting title. I don't know what the hell that's about, but Law and Crime Trials. Tesla US. Although I'm assuming that these are bot accounts, because this doesn't really look like something Tesla would put out on a company account. And then we got Timcast IRL. The H3 podcast. What the hell?
Oh, they're making a comeback. That's different. What's it say? The end for?
I don't know. I don't know. That thumbnail's scaring me a little bit. I keep it away. But let's see here. And then the bot Tesla shows were number one. Why the hell does YouTube not audit the bot accounts? Like the bot accounts like hit the top 10 every day. Like all of these Teslas, like these have like descriptions in Arabic. Like, you know, it's like how the hell are they getting up here?
And also Banana Slam something up there is number 2.
What the hell do they do? They moved up 991 slots.
Yeah, I know that's messed up.
Yeah, that's a little messed up. Really, like the bot accounts take over from number 6 up. This is a real account though, the Pat McAfee show. I don't really know a lot about it, but it's a real show. Like that's not fake. But all the Tesla shows, and maybe this one, are fake. But yeah, that's a little weird. Anyways, we're pretty on up there as far as an American show goes. You know, number 76. We're in the top 100. We're nearly in the top 75 in America just yesterday. And this seems to be a fairly normal trend these days. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I think it's really cool. I mean, like, you know, that's weird because the reason why I bring this up every once in a while, like right now, is that it's really weird for us to kind of process that we're within running distance, better way to put it, of massive voices. Like, you know, like massive, like whether you like them or not, they are massive voices. Like Ben Shapiro, who used to be huge back in the early to mid 2010s and really all the way until the late 2010s, and we're within like. We're really within just easy distance of that. You know, usually we end up outdoing those kinds of numbers. Like tonight, we ended up getting really close. And, you know, we end up getting close to presidential candidates. You know, that's really bizarre to think about. But still, got to thank you once again for that massive support and helping this channel to keep things running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have been around this long to be able to get to this point. And so with that, big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Dark Vixen's Resin, who puts in a 12. And thank you very much, Dark Vixens, for that support. They said hi from the UK. And I just want to say we love you guys. And we've watched every night for months. He said, also, P.S. if I'm not on tomorrow, check the backyard as I'm meant to be saving to move, JK, for the holiday.
Oh, well, I hope you have a fun holiday when that comes around. And also, thank you so much for being one of our viewers from the UK. And also, thank you for saying that y'all love us. We love y'all too. We love y'all. We really do. Because, I mean, hell, we've known a lot of y'all for years. I mean, endless years, really, at this point. And it's really cool to know that we love all of y'all. Y'all love all of us. Well, Matthew and me, it's not a lot of us, but there's a few of us. But beyond that, I got to say, Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks who like you, who enjoyed this channel and supported it to keep it running, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to James Dolan, who puts in a 10. He says, do you think it might be a good idea to buy bulk shares in Lego, as Russia will soon have run out of all other materials to build their armored vehicles with?
Good question, James Dolan. I would say no, because Russia is looking for cheap and affordable, and Lego is not cheap and affordable. Let me explain by pulling up the Lego website. Now, a lot of people used to go, oh, you know, I get a Lego set and I build Legos. And it's like, really? You would? Let me go to the 18 and up category on Lego and let's look at the prices. $150 for Jaws. This is actually pretty cool. Let's see, $99 for a retro. That's actually not that bad. $500 nearly for a McLaren PT.
Oh,
that's a little expensive. What else do they have?
That's crazy.
Titanic for $680. The Artemis mission.
Man, that Artemis space system, that's pretty sick. How much is that?
$260. Oh!
How large is it?
3,601 pieces.
Click on the picture.
Click on the picture. I want to see the picture. So it is 20.
Do they have like a scale on this? Like, can we see like a scale?
Well, I'm about to give you the dimensions if you be patient. It's 28 inches tall, so it's about 2.5 feet tall by 11 inches wide by 12 inches deep. So it's about a square foot in like ground floor area, and then about 2.5 feet tall. So about the size of a corgi.
That's actually like somewhat acceptable. Can we see pictures?
Yes, yes. Here we go, and here we. Oh, look. What's this? Oh. Well, isn't that cool?
Oh, that's damn cool.
That's
I
really
might have to cop one.
For $260? Dude, that's pretty expensive.
I don't know, man. This might go really good in the model shelf. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this might be the centerpiece. Damn, that thing's huge. It's not gonna fit in the model shelf.
Oh, look, it has separate stages?
That's actually one of the coolest Lego things I've seen in a while right here with this one.
No way. Wow, this thing's like, this is actually pretty cool. Like, so hang on here. We probably don't.
Cinematic
we probably don't have a license to that music, so I'm gonna mute that. But just look at that. I mean, this is like,
that's massive.
I'm not gonna lie, y'all. Legos are always cool. Like, you know, like I can't lie. This is actually pretty impressive right here. And it's all completely detachable. It detaches into separate stages. They even put the satellite in the payload area. Okay, that's actually sick.
Yeah, I actually like this one a lot. Like, I really like this one.
That is cool. That is actually cool. But they also have, if you haven't seen it, a full-scale Titanic. And this thing is like, well, not full-scale Titanic, but it's like 54 inches long. This thing is huge.
Damn, $700.
Yeah, man, but look at that. I mean, the detail, the interior. Like, this is actually really cool if you wanted a Titanic Lego model. And that's how big it is.
Oh, dang. Where do you even put that?
I don't even know. I have no clue where you put that when you get done building it. But it is sure as hell impressive, and it does detach into 3 sections.
Oh, just like the real deal, like when it snapped.
Yeah, it actually snapped around this, like, cut in between the stern and right here. So, yeah, kind of like the real deal, but that's actually pretty freaking cool. And it's 9,090 pieces.
Oh, man, that sounds like a disaster.
Oh, you know it, man. You know it. But they do have a whole bunch of other cool models, like, not to, like, rabbit hole on Lego, but I did go and look at their models a while ago, and I was, like, really in awe. Like, they have an Eiffel Tower now that's 10,001 pieces.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Like, back in the day when Matthew and me were kids, and we were into Lego, you know, it's like little kids, the biggest sets that there were, they would have like 3,000 pieces in them, but none of them ever got up to like having 10,000 pieces or 9,000 pieces. So these things are absolutely crazy. And also this typewriter is really cool, but it's $250, so that's pretty expensive. They also have a Mona Lisa, you know, if you wanted a Lego Mona Lisa.
I don't know about that remake. That's not that good.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I'm trying to find some of the other cool ones that I remember seeing a while ago. The grand piano is kind of neat. It's like 3,600 pieces, so that's like about as big as they used to be when we were kids. We're still kind of like kids, we're like young adults, but you know, it is what it is. They have the Notre Dame, but it's not really that big. It's kind of small, but still pretty cool. let's see
I
here.
like that Porsche 911 they had right there. That's pretty cool, the old style.
Oh, that is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm trying to, dude. They have like this really big like supersize thing. I be dipped,
Look at that lion.
man. Bro, that lion be geeking though. Like
Said really?
dude, that lion be going, ah, yeah, bleh. Something like that. It's like that thing's tweaking. By the way, I know that's the little cub thing from The Lion King. I know that, but it's funnier not to call it that. Let's see. Oh, they have this AT-AT thing for like $850. That's kind of expensive. I bet you it's expensive because of Star Wars. I would put money on it. They also have this giant crane. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Let's see here. What else? The boutique hotel. That's actually pretty cool looking. I wouldn't get it, but still pretty cool. That's actually like the stuff I used to build, by the way. When I got Legos, I would always get like these giant like Lego building kits, and I would build buildings like that. But let's see here. What else do they have? The
Oh
Sanctorum.
wow.
What?
Scroll down a little bit.
Oh,
Is that
wow.
that's an MT10. I was about to say that looks like a familiar bike right there. I know that bike. That's a good bike.
That's actually pretty cool. It looks a lot like the real deal, actually.
It does. That's the special edition. By the way, it's got the upgraded calipers and all that stuff on it.
Man, there's just a few more pages to go of the 18 and up stuff, which is like the cool looking stuff.
Oh, there's an S1000. That's pretty cool. BMW bike, one of the fastest. They call that the neck breaker.
Oh, that's cool. I guess it's because it breaks necks.
Yes, the thing's ungodly fast.
Cool. And also, look at this. They have a Land Rover Classic Defender 90.
I like that too. It has like the little bits and pieces that go on the cargo joint up top.
That's pretty cool. I would like one of those. I'm not gonna get Legos though. Like they're cool and everything. I like them. I think they're neat. And I don't think anyone really ever grows out of Legos. I think it's just something that anyone can enjoy. But nah, I can't get any of this stuff. It's just too expensive, really, in my opinion. There's other things that must be had, like ammo, But anyways, we finally reached the end. Pretty cool stuff, though. But if the Russians were looking to get anything, it's clearly not going to be Legos. Because for the cost per size, they're not going to be getting anything big enough to even fit a person. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Khan, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Khan, for that support. And they said, U.S. State Department responds to Lavrov's threats with advice to withdraw Russian troops from Ukraine. And Putin's red lines are a folly, and they are getting ignored by the U.S. And thoughts on Putin's red lines. And also, I noticed the enforcer did not include that video in the news today. Lavrov was actually interviewed today by some interviewer, and Lavrov scolded the reporter a little bit and said, "Don't laugh at our red lines. We do have red lines." And he was like being all serious and stuff and really uptight about whether or not Putin has red lines. Lavrov was still trying to convince everybody that Putin does have a red line and that it hasn't been crossed just yet, but it could be crossed in a day. But one thing telling that Lavrov did say that I found interesting was he said that the U.S. will not send more aid to Ukraine because they don't want to cross that red line. And even though I don't really believe that Russia does have one, I do kind of believe the part about the U.S. not sending more support because they are scared of Putin. That's the only thing that Lavrov was correct about. Now, I think the U.S. will hold back on more aid because of the fear. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I didn't really see a lot of that today. I was busy driving around today, actually getting a look at this beautiful city we live in. And so I didn't really get to see that much, but that is interesting to hear. By the way, y'all, did y'all know that in downtown Birmingham, like, crazily enough, there's just, like, people camping out at the train station, just, like I mean, like, tweaking. Like, I didn't know that. I went down there today and looked around there, and down at the train station in Birmingham, like, I drove by, and there was, like, legit, like, just people tweaking out there on the sidewalks around the train station. Like, I was like, why here? Like, it was kind of like that throughout all of downtown, but it was, like, especially strong around the train station. And I was just like, why? Like, why? Why do y'all have to be here? Because I'm an aficionado of trains, kind of like to look at them. Why are y'all here at this place at this time of day? I just didn't get it. But I did get to see two SD-70s from Norfolk Southern pulling a freight consist into this rail yard up here. I forgot what the name of this one is, but this is one of the rail yards for... Oh, it's the CSX Boyles yard! What the hell? There was a leased Norfolk Southern train and then there was a CSX one, because the Norfolk Southern yard is actually over here. This is the one for Norfolk Southern, and I forgot the name of it. It's the Norris Yard. There we go. But this is the one for Norfolk Southern, and then CSX also has one, but it's on the north side of Birmingham, near the industrial area. But anyways, with that, enough of that. But anyways, I hope I did address that well. And someone said, what the hell is he talking about? I'm talking about the town I live in, man. What, is there something wrong for me to complain about my town? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Wyman Bartlett, who puts in a 10 and says if they want to do business with Russia and China, then give them the same sanctions. And they're referring to Turkey.
And let's see. I would agree with that, Wyman Bartlett. I would say give them the same sanctions. If they want to trade, they can, but if they're not going to be trading with us or the rest of the Western world for that matter any longer. Have fun being Russian. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a $10 super chat from the Urban Cover, who says, did you see how many traders sold out to Russia? And can you explain why usually this people lead toward, let's see here. Is this political? I can't tell.
That seems to be political to me, so we're going to have to skip that one. But I do thank you for the support, the Urban Cover, and helping this channel to keep on running. But also, that's allegedly. That's very strongly allegedly. Because, let me put it like this, okay? This is an alleged statement that was put out today by a certain political group, and much like that political group is saying that these people are Russian-aligned and being paid by the Russian government, there are also people in another direction that claim that we are paid by George Soros, or we're directly paid by the Ukrainian government. It wasn't that long that we actually got claimed by some absolute goof, like one of the stupidest people I'd ever seen. And he's the guy where we get the voice, why in the world are we giving all the money to Ukraine? And he's that guy. Y'all probably don't know who he is, and thank the Lord y'all don't. But he actually directly insinuated that we were getting paid by the Ukrainian government to spread propaganda in support of Ukraine, specifically through United 24. That's what the guy claimed. Now, if that was true, we wouldn't have to take super chats for our income to be able to make a living. We wouldn't have to worry about that, but we do. So that kind of disproves the claim. Also, on top of that, that would be a foreign agent at that point. I don't really like to mess with the gray area of the law with that. So kind of like how that claim could be made against us and we could allegedly be foreign agents in support or operating for Ukraine, that could be the same for those people. And that could be a wrongful claim or a wrongful accusation. Or it could be used as some sort of a weapon in a political sense. That seems to be kind of getting in that gray area of starting to mess with free speech a little bit, because who's to say that these people are not supported by the Russians and they're just exercising their right to free speech like we are? Now we're starting to get into a gray area where people's right to free speech is being suppressed because it's kind of it's something that someone may not like. I mean, I don't agree with what they say, but at the same time, if they're not being paid by the Russian government to say it, they have every right to say it. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Cubes for Square. Squares, that is, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for that support. And also, let me get rid of a bot out of the live chat. We got a couple of them. They got to go. But Cubes for Squares put in that 10 and said, are there established roads that can facilitate rapid transportation of firepower to encircle the penetration of the Russian offensive?
There are established roads pretty much through the entirety of Ukraine, especially in the area around Pokrovsk. If you look down here, there is a highway heading around Karlivka that could be used, and there's also a decent amount up here, like the H20, where you could go towards Novoselivka-Druha. So technically, yes, it's just that those areas seem to have a pretty decent concentration of defensive forces. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to LSA Sergeant Figman, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you, Sarge, for that support. He said, the first day of school, I'm back in Florida teaching history and political science this year, and wish me luck, and take one from the chat, my brothers.
And I hope you have a fun time on your first day at school. And also, I hope you have fun teaching history and political science. History is, of course, my favorite, LSA Sergeant Figman, and I hope you teach it well. Teach it very well. And also, I gotta say, a huge thanks to you once again for always being here with this channel, always supporting it and helping it to keep on running. And we always like to know that you want everyone to hit the like button, and that is in order. And so with that, thank you so much once again. We will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to, let's see here, a JMP Traveler who said, why is Greece's military growing, and are they going to kick it off with Turkey?
They're not going to kick it off with Turkey. They're both NATO members right now, so that kind of puts a freeze on those things. And also, the tensions in between Greece and Turkey aren't as high as they have historically been before, and even at their height, they never went to war. So I would doubt that that would ever happen here soon. Greece is just putting a lot of money into their military because Greece isn't really that well off economically, and that's kind of one of the ways they're hoping to maybe improve their economy somehow, is by just getting a lot of military equipment, putting people in the military, and then paying them, and then having them spend that money elsewhere. So I think that's kind of what they're doing, but I'm not really sure what Greece is actually doing, because that doesn't really make that much sense, at least to me, about what I explained. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, we got a poll right now that's causing quite a stir in the live chat. People are getting very upset. It says, if you had to visit one of these countries, all expenses paid, of course, which would you visit? You have to visit one. About 52% said China, while 26% said Venezuela, 15% said Russia, and 6% said North Korea. And right now, out of all these different countries right here, I think the worst one you could possibly visit is not North Korea, it's actually Russia. Because if you went there as an American, you're going to be in a bad fix, I would imagine so. So I'm the 15% right there said Russia, that might be a death sentence. You might be sent to the front or something, or executed, or tripped out of a window. Honestly, the second worst would be North Korea. The third worst would be Venezuela. And honestly, the one I would have to pick would be China. If I had to go, I would probably go to China. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh man, pretty much going to any of these countries, it's like playing Russian roulette with, are you going to get arrested or not, for no reason. I see a lot of people saying none of the above, and that's kind of the thing. This is like the would you do this or would you rather? You know, it's kind of like one of those questions, a bit of a game of a sort. Not that anyone would actually ever visit these countries, and I hope that you'll have enough common sense not to. But if I had to visit one of them, it would be China. Because North Korea, I would be scared in North Korea. In Venezuela, I'd be scared. No, I mean, hell, I might get turned into an empanada myself, and I don't want that to happen. Russia, I'd die. Like, we actually just died. Matthew and me are on the FSB hit list. We would get killed or arrested in Russia on the site, so I don't think I'd want to take a trip there. And also, let's see here. China may be our best bet, but hardly. Like, I would really hate going to China on a vacation. It's a authoritarian regime, so not really a big fan of that either, but that's probably the best of the four options. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and I cannot be waiting to eat fried rocks and drink sewer water in Shanghai. It would be wonderful. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Richard Shaw, who puts in a 5, and says, why does Putin seem to get away with anything he wants to?
Because they have nuclear weapons, and that largely protects them from any kind of repercussions, because there's no way to really inflict repercussions, because he could just start nuking people. So that's really why he gets away with a lot of the stuff he does. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dark Vixen's Resin once again, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think that when the war is over in Ukraine, they will continue to build the drones they have developed and sell them to help them build back up their GDP?
That's a pretty decent likelihood, actually, Dark Vixen. And to actually say where that would go, those could end up anywhere. And that's kind of like the dangerous thing, is that with a country like Ukraine, if they don't get a lot of economic support after the war, they're going to be desperate to make money anyway, anyhow. And the Ukrainian government's pretty much going to tell their drone producers, look, sell to anyone as long as you're making money. And they'll start selling to anyone because they have to make money. And so that could end up being a little concerning. But the honest answer to that is yes, they probably will continue to mass produce drones after the war, or they're really going to get into the drone industry a lot post-war, and drones are going to become a lot more common in all kinds of applications, not only in Ukraine, but around the world, because they'll be exported. But with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think that Lukashenko is Francisco Franco 2.0?
Oh man, is he Francisco Franco? Probably. I mean, like, that's actually a really good comparison. But one thing that I like with Francisco Franco is that he went, okay, all right, the fascists, we finally won. We finally won in Spain. We're going to make Spain a wonderful nation that's prosperous for everyone. Cut off all trade. And then they like went into like a 30 or 40 year depression. So that's actually like very similar to Belarus because we're kind of in the same spot right now. But man, Francisco Spain was horrendous. Like, it kind of is why Spain's not really a big economic power even now. Like, and they've really had some rough times in the 2008 recession as well. Like, Spain literally collapsed and imploded during that recession. It probably hit them worse than anyone as a direct after effect of that recession. It was a depression for Spain. But beyond that, Francisco Franco Spain was freaking horrendous. And so for that reason, I would say that Belarus is probably very close to that. So yes, Lukashenko could be Francisco Franco 2.0. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Lord Lathos LSA, who puts in a 4 and says, if Belarus attacks, Ukraine gets more free tanks. And thoughts?
Yes, more free tanks, more free scrap, but it would overwhelm them a little bit. But they would get them, though. They would get them. That's guaranteed. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Lord Lathos, legend of the channel, by the way. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in that 2. And thank you very much, Sergeant, for that support. He said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And that's an order. Hit that like button. And I got to thank you so much once again for support, LSA Sergeant Figment. And thank you for telling everyone to hit that like button. That is an order, because it always is an order coming from LSA Sergeant Figment. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mike Sontag, who puts in a 2 as well, and says, you two are the best, and much appreciated. And thank you, Mike, for the kind words.
And thank you, Mike. That is really nice of you. And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running as well, and throwing in some kind words. It really does mean a lot. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Alcacer, who puts in a 2 and says, what if they invade Russia instead? Gomel is next to it.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, most of the Belarusian forces are centered around Gomel all the way down to the Chernobyl area. So it looks like they're more so geared towards heading into Ukraine, but you could make some assumptions there that maybe might go in another direction. You never know. But that is a pretty funny point, though, to bring up now that they're shooting down drones. I like that, Alcacer. And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And with that, that was our final super chat right there. We're about to be moving on into our live chat segment. We're going to address the Morse code decoders of the stream, and we're going to address as many live chats as we can. And looking through the spreadsheet, we have about 6 of them. And so, Matthew, take it away.
So this one, of course, we had the Morse code decoders first. And we had tonight Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, and Her Royal Fluffiness. They said, the Morse code says, Russia is starting to see that Belarus may not be their biggest friends, possibly. LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff that y'all got that dead on the nail. And I got to say, I'm quite proud of y'all. Once again, it's the Morse code decoders. Y'all just keep on getting that time and time again. On the 924th day, y'all still dead on the nail. So a huge congratulations for y'all. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are now on to the next one.
And this one goes to Anonymous, who says, did Belarus know the drones were Russian?
I would have to say, were the drones Russian? We largely know that they are, because the Belarusian channels were claiming them to be Shahed drones. And so apparently something about them gave away the fact that they were Russian drones, or they flew in from Russia, one or the other. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And what's going on in here? Let's see. What's going on down here? In the live chat? Huh? What's going on? I'm seeing something happening here. And someone trying to accuse us of being political here? Is someone trying to accuse us of being political here, Matthew?
Oh, I thought you were investigating. I'm not sure really what's going on.
Well, I hope. I would hope so much. that no one is calling us political or anything like that, because the problem with that is that that's usually grounds for an instant ban. So I'm hoping that someone did not say that, because usually that ends up in an instant ban. And I would hope to know that people really do enjoy this channel and really appreciate it greatly, because you know, if you don't, there's always alternatives, and we hate to see them go. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Hope that does put that out there, because, you know, hoping that that's not the case, I don't really know. I only saw that just recently. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to, let's see here, AF Kaplan, who said, what do you think is the real reason, what's really going on, that Belarus shot down them Russian drones?
I think it was the case that the drones may have just started flying into Belarus on accident, but it did not matter. They were not given authorization to fly through Belarus, so they just got shot down. I think that's probably the likely scenario, which is really the scenario that happens with Poland, because we're not really sure if the Russians deliberately fly them into Poland, but instead of not shooting them down, they shot them down. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking happened at this point. And so I hope, like, oh, thank the Lord, we're back. It finally came back. I was getting scared on that one, man. I thought we were about to get disconnected. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question here, which I think is this one goes to Jay Bagwell, who says, is it conceivable that Turkey sees Russia's collapse, and now they want to lead a new sphere in Southwest Asia and the Middle East?
That's an interesting question, Jay Bagwell. That could be the case, possibly, because they really are trying to make that mini-sphere around the Black Sea and around the Eastern Mediterranean and also in the Arabian Peninsula. So it could be possible that they're trying to do something like that, but that's still diverging too far from our interest to be able to be in support of it at this point, because if Turkey, like the Western world works, that there has to be one unified leader. We can't have like a mini sphere inside of our sphere. It just has to be one homogenous sphere. So if the Turks want to do that, they're going to have to go off on their own. But I think that may actually be a good point, J-Bag. Well, that's the way I haven't looked at it, but they could be trying to sandwich their way into that so that way they can have closer relations with China, which would end up being a bit of an economic partner in their sense in the future. And also so that way they could try and get in on the trade with the Indians. Interestingly enough, a lot of those people are actually east of them and would probably be a part of the One Belt program, the One Belt, One Road program for China. So, yeah, I mean, they could be doing that. That's actually a really good point. Jay Bagwell, you're a visionary. I actually did not think about it like that, but that's probably what they're actually trying to do. Once again, falling under the turkey does turkey thing sort of a vibe, but still, that's pretty on point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and it looks like we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jiggles, who says, what do you think the chances are that Belarus will pull a double cross on the Russians and join forces with Ukraine?
I feel like the chances of that are pretty low. I don't know what Belarus is doing right now. It's almost like a wild card at this point. So I'm kind of just like really not wanting to make any judgments at all and just wait and see what's happening. So we really don't know. Maybe they'll do something like that. I'm doubting it a little bit. But you just don't really know these days. It could go any way. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. It's a little bit of an indecisive answer, but Belarus is an indecisive country of sorts. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Luca Pro, who says, what do you think about North Korea sending weapons to the front lines in Ukraine?
I haven't heard about any weapons arriving. We've never even heard of that engineering brigade showing up, ever. So you guessed that was a farce from everyone involved in that, the North Koreans and Russians included. I haven't heard of any weapons arriving in large numbers. We have seen some shells arriving, but most of those have been duds and have absolutely sucked as actual weapons. So from what we can tell, they're not that high quality. Small arms never have arrived from what we can tell, but artillery munitions have arrived, and about 50% of them or more are duds. So that's pretty wild when you think about it. That's a really high dud rate. It's insanely high. But I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And of course, with that, I got to say a huge thanks to every single one of y'all so much for watching. We had a peak viewership here of 12.2 thousand live viewers tonight. Pretty freaking high. And not only that, we've had about 101,000 people watch this stream since it started. We are entirely honored and grateful to have each and every single one of y'all here with us each and every single night. And if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe. We've actually ended up surpassing 271,000 subscribers tonight. That's crazy. Hey!
Let's go!
We're on our way to 300,000. And if y'all subscribe, y'all can be a part of that long march to 300,000 subscribers. You never know. But still, I thank you all so much once again for watching. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, once again, a huge shout out to everybody for another great stream tonight. Another great night of news on day 924 of the war. But with that, we'll see you all tomorrow. Get some rest. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next nightly war news stream. And with that, good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards